Greetings from the Shigaraki family. Before the video begins, I am grateful to the original author for granting us permission to incorporate their work into our video. I am extremely grateful. The description contains the work of the original author. We will now proceed to the video. Your Lives Are My Game by Zerum7, Poor Things. Izuku read a news article on his phone. What was that? Inko, Izuku's lovely mother, loudly asked from the kitchen. Who's poor, Izuku? You don't know? Izuku suddenly appeared next to her in the kitchen, startling her. You. Izuku. Inko bopped him on the head with the wooden spoon she was using. What have I told you about using your meta like that? If you scare me again, I'll throw you across the fourth world. The whole thing? Izuku crossed his arms. Good luck with that. Your meta, at best, would launch me about a country over. Inko growled. You wanna bet, you little shrimp? Izuku growled back. I think I do, you old hag. Then they laughed together a few moments later. You're as fiery as your father. Izuku smiled. And for that, I have pride. And yes, I accept your apology. You know, for calling me a shrimp. You called me old. Inko jokingly retorts. I'm as youthful as any other lady in their late second century of life. What you said was hurtful. Yeah, well, you're old by human standards. Humans? Inko asked with curiosity in her tone. You're interested in those of the lower plane? As if, Izuku said. Their lifespans are much shorter than ours, and our planet is exactly 1,100,000 times bigger than any planet in their cosmos. He lived on an extremely massive superplanet with a massive population. Their sun wasn't like the ones in the lower plane. It was instead a hypergiant star. Then you insulted me by using their metrics to measure me. Inko resists the urge to hit him. Anyways, what did you come on here for again? Ah, right. Izuku showed his mother what he was reading earlier. In a single glance, she fully grasped everything. It's about these. I know. Lady Chaos and Lord Pinetree were thrown into the lower plane. Stupid names aside, doing that was pretty stupid. Stupid? Why? Because the lower plane can't handle metas like theirs. What? They'll be fine. I heard Pinetree's meta was pretty pathetic. He needs to gather power before he can do basic things like warp reality and travel through spacetime. He wouldn't have survived here. Yeah, but while space-time manipulation may be a regular thing here, from what I heard, it isn't on the lower plane. He would probably be considered a god down there. Probably, but he's bound to be killed by some human at some point. I don't know about Lady What's-Her-Name, though. She seems pretty scary. If they didn't want those kids, they should have just thrown them into the Chronokano, or killed them. The Chrono what? Inko threateningly points her spoon at him. You need to brush up on your geography. The Chronokano is a rupture on Christmas Island. In it, time doesn't move. And when it erupts, everything in it gets erased from existence. Bad little kids like you get tossed in it all year. Round. Christmas Island? Izuku nudged his mother. Speaking of Christmas, there's this neat little continuity I'd like to check out in the lower plane. It's called My Hero Academia. Can I check out one of the universes in it for Christmas, please? Inko glared at him before her eyes widened. You were planning this, weren't you? You brought up humans and those two kids, so I'd mention the Chronokano on Christmas Island, at which point, you'd transition to what you wanted for Christmas for the 20th time. Sunglasses spawned on Izuku's face, and it worked like a charm. Inko rolled her eyes. Fine. I'll get you a pass so you can play around in your academics or whatever. Academia. Izuku corrected whilst beaming. Whatever. Just don't have too much fun and cause problems for the time enforcement agencies down there, okay? I heard they hate crossovers. Yeah, I'll be a good boy. Christmas isn't very far away, so just, the soup she was making burns. Inko groaned. Fucking Izuku, if you may. Right. In an instant, like it never happened, the soup was restored. A form of time control. I'm jealous. And your meta only lets you move things at the speed of sound. It's funny how that works. Yeah, you little gremlin. I know. Now go to your room while I fix up dinner. Izuku happily skipped away. Every day that passed, he eagerly anticipated Christmas. At school, at home, while showering, he couldn't stop thinking about what the My Hero Academia world would be like. Soon enough, it was late Christmas Eve. In just a few minutes, it'd be Christmas. He'd get his pass and play around in the My Hero Academia continuity. What I'll do when I get there? Izuku pondered. Since everyone there's gonna be weaker than me, I could take over the world or something. No, that's boring. Then he remembered his meta. With it, he'd be all-powerful down there. It'd be like a video game. He could take roots and reset everything when he was done. This is gonna be so cool. Izuku kicked his feet excitedly on the edge of his bed. But what first? Benevolent hero or malevolent villain? Save the world or kill everyone in it? Start wars, famines, apocalypses? He was excited. His excitement builds, and the instant the clock hit 12 p.m., he rushed to his mother's room without his meta and burst in. Mom. Ah. She cut him off with a wave of her hand. I knew you were gonna do this. She held up a pass. A simple white blank ticket. I already bought it. It's an unlimited pass, so you can stay in that continuity as long as you like. Izuku beamed, leaping into his mother's arms and giving her a bone-crushing hug. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome, you little gremlin. She ruffled his mop of hair. Now go to the receptionist lady. Don't destroy too many timelines, and most importantly, have fun. He kissed her on the cheek. Love you, Mom. Before Inko could reciprocate, he vanished via his meta. Hey. Little gremlin must have made a save point prior to bugging me about that hero continuity. Asterisk Izuku appeared in front of the receptionist lady's building. A simple white hotel. He strode in, humming as he walked up to her desk. Receptionist lady. The white-haired, white-eyed woman smiled kindly. Izuku. How's it going? Great. Are you here to converse with me about continuities again? If so, may I interest you in one called Bleach? There's an abundance of cute girls? Nah, I'll be exploring one, actually. Izuku hands her his pass, My Hero Academia. She smirks. It's about time. She took it and moved from behind her nice desk. Come with me. As they began their walk down one of the infinitely long hallways, Izuku gazed upon the many doors they passed. They all lead to other continuities, and Izuku saw many people enter and exit said doors to continuities. Phew, that was fun, a man said whilst exiting a door. It sucks I couldn't get an unlimited pass. 4 months is not enough to fully explore the legend of Zelda. Zelda? A woman spoke up at him before laughing. You chose that continuity? Boring? Shut up. You chose fucking Honey Pop. Honey Pop? A teenage girl exits a door next to theirs? Seriously? That's what I'm saying. The man shouted. Infinite continuities, and you choose that one? The teenage girl chided. The woman frowned childishly. Oh yeah. What did you choose? My Little Pony? Or some other boring little girl shit like Barbie? RWBY? Or Doc McStuffins? None of those, she answered, pointing at the sign on her door. I chose Kyo. They both began snickering at her. Oh, don't you start, Ms. Honeypop. Unlike you, I actually had a good time with real lower plane hotties of highest tier. They immediately stopped snickering. The man simply said, huh? I can instantly twist the minds of others in any way I see fit with my meta and without anyone ever knowing. And I can do the same with my own physical body. Let's just say I spoiled myself a little. The woman grinned. I see. Lucky skank. You should take them for a spin. If you're an ass lover, that is. For the metafolk, the highest and most unstoppable beings in creation, this was a way of life. Those on the lower plane and their universes served as entertainment for them. They were the absolute, the genesis, origin of all living creatures and the reason they had supernatural abilities in the first place. Even the metas of some lower-end metafolk were strong enough to completely dominate those on the lower plane. Very few metafolk ever died, and even fewer were slain by mortals. Those who ended up as the latter weren't mourned. Being killed by a lower life form means you were unfit to be one of them. Izuku enjoyed being himself despite this. He appreciated his mother, his meta, and his way of life and never wanted it to change. He looked at the receptionist lady. Damn. She looked back at him. Your ass is huge. I'm sure you'll find bigger in the My Hero Academia continuity. Speaking of which. She stopped in front of the door. We're here. Izuku grinned, the gears in his head already turning. Now then, before you go. I know the rule already. Izuku interjects. Don't go outside of my chosen continuity. Otherwise, the mortals will get all pissy. That, and your settings. She hands him a tablet. How will you go about your exploration? If you wish to remain as you are, hand that tablet back to me without making any changes. Izuku grinned as he went through the settings menu. This would be fun. Asterisk. Izuku. Inko shouted. Izuku, if you don't wake up, you'll be late for the entrance exams. She waits, and he doesn't move a muscle. Inko opened the curtains to his window before making her way out of his room. Breakfast is downstairs, she said before leaving. Izuku gets up a few moments after he's gone. For some reason, he sleeps while fully clothed. A black sweater with 2 large green stripes and black shorts. He sneered before opening his window and vanishing. He was in front of UA in seconds. Many students of many shapes and sizes were entering the massive building. This'll be a cinch. He spots Bakugo walking in and grins. Sneakily, he walks up behind him. On your left, he shouts before shoving him to the ground with just his shoulder. My bad, Izuku said in a mock-friendly tone. Bakugo just quietly growled at him. I mean, I did try to warn you. Good luck with the exams. Bakugo stood up, glaring daggers at the green-haired boy before wiping himself down and entering the building after him. Izuku kicked his feet up as President Mike gave a rundown of what had been happening during the exams. To Bakugo's horror, he was seated next to him. He glanced over to Izuku and found him smiling as creepily as always. What the fuck do you? His card disappears from his hand. It was in Izuku's, who was inspecting it. Ah, we aren't in the same area. TCH. Bakugo huffed and snatched his card back. Leave me the hell alone. Izuku gave Bakugo a demeaning look. You're here in the greatest hero school in the world, and you're still huffy. I wonder why. Bakugo rolled his eyes. As time went on, Izuku thankfully stopped bothering him. The written exams come and go, and then Izuku was put on a bus with some other kids. They were on their way to the site where the practicals would take place. Unfortunately, he couldn't pass the time by subtly harassing Bakugo, so Izuku sleeps in the meantime. When they arrived, Izuku looked around at the competition. There were a few cute girls here and there, especially one with brown hair, but none that impressed him. None of the guys were interesting either. Man, humans are boring. Besides, befriending people on this route is kinda pointless anyway, considering what I'm gonna be doing. Izuku decided to do a neutral route first. Here, he would be on the side of good, but he wouldn't be good, nor would he be pure evil. He'd help people and save lives, but that didn't mean he'd be well liked by anyone. Not by the heroes or villains. To put it simply, he would be going about this as he would normally. Resetting time, killing, and saving who he wanted without any kind of restraint. The practicals begin, and Izuku dashes past everyone and begins destroying robots with his bare hands. They were really weak, which disappointed him. I shouldn't be surprised, Izuku thought as he lightly tapped a robot, turning it to scrap. The gravity on this planet is extremely weak, and on top of metafolk bodies simply being stronger than humans naturally, I could probably destroy the planet with my bare hands alone if I tried hard enough. But there'd be no fun in doing that. The weak gravity made him faster and hit harder, so much so that it looked like robots were being destroyed by the air. A few minutes in, Izuku feels that he's gained enough points and stops fighting. I guess I should help people. This a hero route, after all. And he does so, helping others where he could and only using his physical strength. His meta wasn't even needed here. He destroyed a sneaky 3-pointer that was about to blindside a frog girl. Startled, she turned and was about to thank him, but Izuku didn't give her the time of day. Pay more attention, he said before disappearing. The frog girl was surprised at how fast he moved. His strength and speed are like All Might's. And then Izuku came down from the sky to flatten a 3-pointer a girl with strange earlobes was struggling against. Thanks, she said tiredly. Also, damn, you're strong as. She trails off when she noticed he was gone. Hey, where'd he go? A pink-skinned girl with pink hair melted the leg joints on a 2-pointer and was about to go in for the kill. That was until Izuku came in and kicked it to bits. Hey, she pouts. I had that. Izuku shrugs at her. She growled at him adorably before stomping away. Izuku continued this until he heard and felt something huge shake the ground. He perched atop a building to see what it was. It was the zero-pointer President Mike mentioned, and just beneath his feet was a girl trapped under some rubble. In an instant, Izuku rushed over and caught the zero-pointer's foot before it could crush her to death. He yawned before slapping the robot away absent-mindedly. This was a mistake, which he found out after hearing a chorus of screams. The zero-pointer he slapped away ended up bulldozing a bunch of people, killing most of them and permanently injuring others. The girl under the rubble looked horrified, as did many others. A tall blue-haired boy with engine legs stomped over, extremely angry and about to get on his ass about what he did. Izuku rolled his eyes. Save loaded. Izuku caught the hulking zero-pointer's foot before it could crush the girl under the rubble. He tore off its leg with ease, bringing it down. He leapt into the air and crushed its head with his strength and the robot's own leg. This time, no one was hurt or killed. Izuku leapt to the ground and threw the rubble off of the trapped girl. "Thank you," she said, forcing herself to her feet. "You're a lifesaver." Izuku snorts at this. And then the practicals end. As the girl was about to continue talking with him, he walked away. She raised an eyebrow. "What is up with that guy?" Izuku entered his home through the window. To his annoyance, a very displeased Inko Midoriya was in his room waiting for him. "Hi. Izuku Midoriya," she huffed. "Why did you? Wasn't hungry. Did the exams more than likely pass them? Today was fine." Inko sighed. "I just wished you." Hey. Izuku snapped his fingers. "I did the exams, and I wasn't hungry. I don't eat." "Inko. You know this. You don't need to talk to me about anything going on in your life. Because we both know I don't care, and, as I've said time and time again, I don't need you, and I never will." Inko tears up. Izuku lays his head back. "Bye." He waved her away. Inko fidgets before slowly walking out. They didn't have the usual mother-child dynamic. They were more roommates than mother and son. Izuku took what he needed and nothing else. There wasn't any love, not from Izuku anyway. To him, she was the person who maintained his living space for him and nothing else. Inko, after entering her room, faceplants into her bed and bawled her eyes out. She had been spiraling slowly for years ever since that day. Her son didn't awaken his Quirk at 4 like everyone else. He tearfully asked if he could be like All Might while watching his debut video. And instead of reassuring him or helping him, she just apologized profusely. She was pathetic. Despite knowing that Izuku was being bullied despite his attempts at hiding it, she knew and did nothing. The smile he used to hide the pain hurt Inko's soul more than anything else. It was this way for years. And then Izuku turned 8 years old. It was like a switch had flipped in his mind. Not only did he suddenly get incredibly strong, but he also displayed other miscellaneous abilities such as what she believed to be teleportation. She didn't know what his quirk was since he refused to get re-diagnosed. From there, he was completely different. He mostly ignored her even when it was his birthday, and she offered to do something together. There were also a few calls from teachers about his sudden use of violence. He was even constantly bullying people such as his childhood friend, Bakugo. He wasn't himself anymore. Inko tried and tried again to help him, but her son never returned to his old self. And in part, it was her fault. She didn't help him in time, and now he was spiteful and violent. And worst of all, he didn't love her anymore. Regret and self-loathing became the norm for her. She wanted Izuku Midoriya, her beloved son, back. He was strong, much stronger than she could ever hope to be. He wouldn't listen to her if she kept trying to talk with him. She needed a much different approach. Izuku received his results sometime later. He received the letter from Inko, who he shoved out of his room after getting it. It was All Might who spoke to him. He said a lot that Izuku didn't care about. After hearing that he passed, he was satisfied. Even more so when he was told that he broke All Might's record of 120 total points with a whopping 250. Very nice. Of course, had he been active the entire time, he would have gotten well over 300 points. Metafolk, like himself, didn't truly need sleep, but it felt nice and he had nothing better to do, so he sleeps in preparation for tomorrow. When tomorrow comes, he heads to his class, which was 1A as soon as he entered. Everyone looked at him. Izuku stares back at them, scanning the class until he found Bakugo, who flinched upon meeting his eyes. Izuku smirks. "If it isn't my resident punching bag." The boy with the engine legs approached him. You're Izuku Midoriya, yes? Izuku ignored him, turning around and spotting a yellow cocoon on the ground. Hi. He said. Hello, the yellow thing on the ground said, terrifying engine legs and the other students. From it emerged a scraggly man. You noticed me. You have good instincts. Don't give me too much credit. Izuku smiled at him. Between the bright yellow sleeping bag and the fact that you were right behind me, it's likely less me having good instincts and more of you being horrible at hiding yourself. He shrugged. Not that your level of skill mattered anyway, regardless of your position and cover, I would have spotted you. With that, he made a bad first impression on his classmates. Ah, an ego. I can't say I'm surprised. Breaking All Might's record made him full of himself. I'll be extra tough on him and wring out the excess arrogance. I'm your teacher, Shota Aizawa. Another shock to everyone. He unveiled a set of clothes. Go put on your gym clothes and meet me outside. They do so, and once outside, Aizawa explains the test. Unlike in middle school, they'd be able to use their quirks to their fullest. Midoriya. Izuku doesn't respond at first since that technically wasn't his name. Amongst the metafolk, family names were rare. Midoriya. Yeah? You got first place in the entrance exams and even broke All Might's record. Bakugo was still pissed about that. In middle school, what was your record throw? I didn't care to remember. Izuku answered. Aizawa sighed. Whatever. Just come up here and throw the ball as hard as you can. No, Aizawa's brow raised. Excuse me, let some other schmuck show off. The animosity was palpable. I'm gonna spend the next 3 years with that annoying show-off, Toru Hagakure thought, displeased. What a pain. Everyone thought in unison. Bakugo, who got second place in the entrance exams, went up. He threw the ball with his quirk backing it and got 889.8 meters, impressing the class. A few of his classmates, like Mina Ishiso, for instance, believed this would be fun, only to be shot down when Aizawa announced that the person in last would be expelled. This was unfair, but Aizawa gave a speech on the unfairness of the world and how heroes and meant to combat that unfairness, which Izuku very loudly yawned in the midsection of. Everyone hoped the tests would humble him a little bit. TEST1. 50METER- To everyone's surprise, Izuku flat out refused to go first. Only after Bakugo went against Uraraka was he finally willing to go. Bakugo got 4.13 seconds. Less than Iida but still pretty impressive. Then Izuku went up and was against Momo Yaoyorozu. As soon as they were prompted to begin, Izuku waited for about 2 seconds before actually going, getting 3.13 seconds and Momo getting 3 seconds. Everyone immediately knew what he was doing. That's what's going on, huh? Aizawa looked to him and then at Bakugo. He is only interested in one-upping Bakugo. Probably just to piss him off. And based on their body language, I assume one of them either is bullying or has a history of bullying the other. Yaoyorozu was pissed. Deep down, she knew that Izuku was capable of beating her with ease. But he actively chose not to. She confronts him on this. Why did you hold back? She asked forwardly. Only to be ignored. She narrowed her eyes at him. He's just toying with us. Toru hated this with a passion. That guy. All of that power, and he chooses to be a jerk about it. He's not even trying for first place. She had a special hatred for show-offs. Bakugo simply rolled his eyes. He tried not letting this get to him, but Izuku always seemed to know how to get under his skin. Test 2. Grip strength. Everyone kept an eye on Izuku and noticed him paying special attention to Bakugo specifically. He hasn't done the test yet, so he didn't either. Bakugo sweats, and it was painfully obvious he was stalling. What do I do? I have to go at some point, but that bastard is just gonna. He trails off. Whatever. Just ignore him, damn it. Bakugo does the test, getting 210 kilograms with his own strength plus his quirk. At last, Izuku does his. Bakugo doesn't look at him. Wow. Izuku shouted loudly. A whopping 310 whole kilograms. I really outdid myself. I don't know, but I think 310 kilograms is bigger than 210. Bakugo growled quietly to himself. Secondhand embarrassment permeated the air. Everyone else kept away from them, not wanting to be caught in the crossfire of the one-side foe rivalry. Foe? is used due to it being less of a friendly rivalry and more of Izuku mentally bullying him and him alone. Test 3. Standing long jump Bakugo and the others cleared the sandbox. Thankfully, Izuku seemed to cool off a bit here. He, like the rest, cleared the sandbox. But a few more analytical students such as Momo and Iida were able to tell that he landed slightly further than Bakugo did. Test 4. Repeated sidesteps. Bakugo loosely copied Mineta's technique and did pretty well, but Izuku inched ahead of him as always. Test 5. Ball throw. Ochako got infinity, which genuinely surprised Izuku and floored everyone else. And then it was Izuku's turn. I can't be the only one who noticed his hate boner for Bakugo, right? Kaminari asked. Interesting description, but no, you aren't the only one. Tenya answered, nodding. As childish and infuriating as it is, it's actually quite impressive. Impressive? Mineta said. It's just childish and infuriating, not impressive. Tenya clarifies. He's using just enough strength to trump his score but not enough to blow us out of the water. If there's anything to admire about him, which there isn't much, it's his persistence in one-upping Bakugo. Todoroki stares holes into the back of Izuku's head. Izuku throws. And to no one's surprise, he got a score of 989.8 meters, once again one-upping Bakugo. Aizawa thought about canceling Izuku's quirk and lecturing him, but he decided to save it for later. He also figured he may need help with his huge ego and grudge. Test 6. Distance run. Despite Iida and Momo surpassing him, Izuku persistently kept slightly ahead of Bakugo alone and adjusted his speed whenever he tried getting ahead, which he never managed to do. Test 7. Seated toe touch. Izuku relaxed a bit for this test but still did better than everyone else. His flexibility, to Ishido's annoyance, surpassed everyone's. Test 8. Sit UPS. A simple test that consisted of doing as many sit-ups as possible. Bakugo managed 134, and Izuku stopped at 136. Asterisk. The results were revealed by Aizawa, and Izuku only looked at his. He was just above Bakugo in third place. Just as he planned. The person in last place and Minoru Mineta, who screamed in terror. His terror was dashed when Aizawa said he wasn't expelling anyone. It was a rational deception, as he put it. Momo states that she was surprised no one else figured it out. I guess I should have said something. I guess I should have said something, Izuku mockingly repeats. Momo called him out. Do you have something to say, Midoriya? Izuku acknowledged that he heard her but ultimately said nothing. They were sent off to pick up their syllabi from the classroom. In the midst of leaving to go to lunch after doing this, Kirishima and Kaminari. They were gonna say something, mostly likely about his attitude, but Izuku pushes past them without batting an eye. As he walked away, Jiro spat, so, what do you think his deal is? More importantly, Mineta points at Bakugo. What's up with you and him? Do you guys know each other? Bakugo scoffed. Yeah, we've known each other since we were babies. Momo asked, then why? The explosive blonde sighed. He may as well admit it now rather than later. He didn't get his quirk when we were 4. I did, and me, being the little shit I was, bullied him for it. As did everyone else. No one really liked this. It left a sour taste in their mouths, but then again, he was young and stupid. They gave him a pass for that, for now. And then it was like a switch went off in his head when he turned 8, which was when his quirk finally came in. The difference between the Midoriya before his quirk came in and after is like the difference between heaven and earth. Kaminari scoffed. Well, duh. Imagine you wake up one day with strength that could probably match All Might's. I'd change, too. His quirk isn't super strength, Bakugo said, shocking everyone. I mean, he obviously has a lot of physical power, but that isn't what his quirk is entirely. Then what is it? Ochako asked. Hell, if I know. He never told anyone, not even his mom. He didn't update his quirk registration either, so I bet Ua is in the dark, too. But aside from the strength, I've noticed a few things. Bakugo states. He knows a lot. More than anyone should. It's like he knows exactly what to do in every situation, like he's been through it before. In middle school, after his quirk came in, he always got scores that were just slightly above mine, always. If I got an 80 on homework, he got a perfect 90 and such. Future sight. Momo suggests. But to what extent? They continued chatting. And unbeknownst to them, two people were listening in. Nezu, through the cameras, and Aizawa, who was just napping in the classroom. Or at least he was. The next day was mostly an interesting one. At least until their heroics teacher, All Might, announced what their lesson would be. Combat training. Some were excited, but most others weren't. Mainly because of Izuku, who acted surprisingly neutral in the face of this news. And that's what frightened Bakugo. Why wasn't he grinning ear to ear at the possibility of showing him up again? In any case, they changed into their hero costumes and went to training ground Beta. Izuku's costume was just what he primarily wore. A black sweater with 2 dark green stripes and black shorts. His classmates talked amongst themselves, complimenting each other and whatnot, and mostly avoiding him. Except for Mina, surprisingly, who approached him while ignoring the protests of Jiro and Hagakure. "Hey, Midoriya." Izuku looks at her, his expression neutral. "Your grudge against Bakugo, who used to bully you, is pretty obvious." Izuku doesn't react. "I happen to dislike bullies, too. And in my personal opinion, simply moving on with your life is." Izuku sneezes. The sudden nature of it threw Mina off and made her forget what she was gonna say. Izuku sniffles and wiped his nose. And then All Might explains the exercise. There'd be teams, heroes and villains, and a bomb in a building. All Might draws lots to form the teams. Team A, Midoriya and Bakugo. No, everyone looked at him. All Might asked him, "No? What?" Save loaded. Team A. Midoriya and Uraraka. That's slightly better. Not that I'll need her. Izuku didn't pay attention to the rest of the teams. Except Bakugo's, who was paired with Todoroki on Team D. The first teams to fight will be. All Might dramatically drew the first 2 teams. These guys. Team A vs Team F. No, save loaded. Team A vs Team C. Boring. Save loaded. Team A vs Team C. Really? Save loaded. Team A vs Team D. Perfect. Izuku smirked, sending a shiver down Bakugo's and everyone else's spines. He didn't mean to say that out loud, but oh well. Team A will be the heroes, and Team D will be the villains. Everyone else, head to the monitoring room to watch. All Might said, receiving a chorus of, "Yes sir," s in response. Bakugo and Todoroki were given 5 minutes to set up, and Izuku and Uraraka were given time to plan. They were also given the building's floor plan. Uraraka was kinda scared to talk with her teammate. After all, according to Bakugo, who she felt bad for, Izuku had been bullying him relentlessly for years. A little payback was warranted after how he was treated for not getting his quirk at 4, but his extent? It wasn't right. Nonetheless, she nuts up and speaks. "Hey, I can handle them both on my own." Izuku interjects. He turned to her with an unnerving, subtle smile. "So just stay out here." He wasn't asking. Uraraka's wanted so badly to just listen to him out of fear. But heroes weren't afraid, and heroes couldn't and shouldn't be afraid of their comrades. "No," Uraraka said firmly. "This is a team exercise, so we're working together. Individually, neither of us can handle Bakugo and Todoroki at once." Izuku rolled his eyes, opting to ignore her from now on. Bakugo and Todoroki stood in front of the bomb. So, the latter said, "How do you suggest we go about handling Midoriya?" As much as he hated to admit it, he knew that he wouldn't be able to handle him on his own. If it were anyone else, he would have just frozen the building instantly and won that way. "He has an ego," Bakugo states. "He won't team up with Uraraka, so we're focusing on him and him alone." "I see. He's also way faster than he lets on, and his other senses are extremely strong. He can find and reach us in just a few seconds." That got to Todoroki. "A few seconds? Seriously?" "Yeah. The plan is to stall him out. The instant the exercise starts, you freeze the entire building. That way, he's forced to break the ice with his strength to move around. That'll allow us to gauge where he is at all times. You'll stay here and defend bomb, and I'll go down each floor to confront and stall him. And if he gets up here," Bakugo sweats but keeps a smirk on his face, "we're screwed." The exercise began, and Uraraka was about to enter the building. But Izuku grabbed her by the wrist. "Hey," instantly on the defensive, Uraraka tried tearing her arm out of Izuku's grip, which wasn't possible. She gets angry. "What are you doing?" The exercise started. Then the building freezes. Uraraka quickly realizes that had she gone in there, she'd be a popsicle. Izuku released her arm, and she apologized nervously. Sorry, I didn't know you were just looking out for me. Much to her frustration, Izuku ignored her. All Might announces the start of the exercise. Wanting to torment Bakugo for as long as possible, he leapt to the top floor and broke in, leaving Uraraka behind. In just a few seconds, he found the villains and the bomb. Monitoring room, seriously? Asui says. It hasn't even been a minute yet, ribbit. I don't know what I was expecting, Jiro says flatly. To that, Sato says, ditto. I don't mean to state the obvious, but... Hagakure spoke over Shiro. Todoroki and Bakugo are done for. Obvi. She spat indignantly. Asterisk, or I'll just face him here, Bakugo said internally, quickly turning over to his teammate, Todoroki. But Izuku was there, and before either could move, Todoroki was kicked into a wall and knocked out instantly. Bakugo backed away, but Izuku kicked him square in the face with the bottom of his foot, sending him flying. He was knocked out for a few seconds before he stood up and flew at Izuku, his nose broken and his face bloody. Only to be knocked out again via another brutal kick to the face. He wakes up again, and was knocked out again. Izuku wasn't touching the bomb, Todoroki was out cold, and Uraraka could feasibly traverse the frozen building. All Might appeared annoyed. Aizawa said he'd likely be difficult to straighten out, and this grudge. I didn't think he'd want to hurt him to this extent. He speaks over the intercom. The hero team is disqualified. Ochako paled upon hearing that. The villain team wins. Return to the monitoring room right away. They return. Todoroki and Bakugo were carried away by medical robots. As soon as they stepped into the monitoring room, Izuku was scolded by All Might. That was the worst performance in any heroics exercise I've ever seen. As he kept chewing him out, it became more clear that Izuku wasn't listening. Not up until the end, anyway. Myself, your homeroom teacher, and Principal Nezu are gonna have a talk with you and your mother about the extreme level of violence you showcased against your classmate today. Heroes must. Izuku once again tuned him out. Should I start over here? I want Bakugo to be in pain, but if I get expelled, I'll have to start over anyway. After some internal debate, he decides against it. No, I want to see where this goes. Besides, being neutral means I don't discriminate when it comes to brutalization. Afterward, the exercise proceeds somewhat normally, and then it was off to Nezu's office. Inko fidgets in her chair under the intimidating eyes of All Might and Aizawa. It's an honor to meet the esteemed parent of such an interesting child, Ms. Midoriya. Nezu states politely. Thanks. Inko said warily. To keep your son's situation simple, he used excessive violence against a student, Katsuki Bakugo, during an exercise today. Inko sighed. To Nezu's surprise, she wasn't surprised. Aizawa's eyebrow rose. You don't look surprised, Ms. Midoriya. I'm not, she says. Ever since my boy awakened his quirk, he's been different. Nezu snuck glances at Izuku while she is speaking, studying his body language thoroughly. He showed no kind of discomfort or irritation. He simply didn't care, which unnerved the chimera a little. Had he let a sociopath into his walls? He's spiteful. He doesn't listen to me, and... She briefly trails off. I sometimes feel like someone, or something, replaced him under my nose. He's just so different. Nezu would test that, turning over to Izuku. Hey, what's your name? Izuku. Izuku answered. Oh, Nezu says. Just Izuku? No family name? No, he answered causally. How interesting, Nezu says, subtly reaching for a black button under his desk. This isn't Izuku Midoriya. Just who am I talking to? What's your quirk, Izuku? Nezu asked with a smile. Quirk? Izuku smiled back. Where I'm from, it's called a meta. Nezu smashed the button under his desk, and Aizawa tried activating his quirk, but... Save loaded. Hey. What's your name? Izuku Midoriya. Why? Nezu hummed, wishing he had brought a certain detective here with him. Nothing. In any case, I'd like to ask you something, Izuku Midoriya. I won't be answering. Nezu asked anyway. Just what is your quirk? You have strength and endurance like All Might's, and according to Katsuki Bakugo, You have an assortment of other abilities unrelated to super strength, such as heightened senses. This unnerved All Might, reminding him a certain dead multi-quirked villain. After a few moments of silence, Nezu spoke again. Is there a reason you won't speak in regards to your quirk? Nothing. If you won't do the bare minimum and answer a few simple questions, then I'll have no choice but to either call in a specialist or simply expel you and not waste any more time. Save loaded. Is there a reason you won't speak in regards to your quirk? No, Izuku answered. If you won't do the bare minimum and answer a few simple questions, then I'll have no choice but. Save loaded. I'm not, Inko says. Ever since my boy awakened his quirk, he's been different. Different? Izuku chose to egg her on this time. It was to make Nezu think he was a poor, broken little soul with anger issues when in reality, he was perfectly fine. Different? She shouted a little. Ever since your quirk came in, it's like you suddenly didn't like anything. I wonder why. Based on the teachers' faces and Nezu's, they bought his act. I'm trying to help you, but you won't, Ms. Midoriya. Nezu spoke over the distraught mother. If you'd like, I could set your son up with Hound Dog. He's a pro hero with special talent as a guidance counselor for the youth. I have no doubt that he'll be able to get to the root of your problems and guide you into solving them. Izuku didn't want to deal with this, but this was what the neutral route had in store, so he'd deal with it. He likely wouldn't have to do this again in his other routes, such as the Genocide one. Inko shakily nods her head. Okay. Great. Nezu clapped his paws. I'm glad to have so easily reached a consensus with you two. For now, your son will be suspended from the next few heroics classes, which will be substituted for sessions with Hound Dog. It'll be up to you to catch up, Midoriya. Izuku leans back in his chair. You know, there's this thing I get on a few occasions. A feeling of sorts. A hunch? Aizawa asked flatly. Yeah, that. I have this strange feeling that you're gonna regret doing that. Inko shook her head disapprovingly, and Nezu didn't think much of what he said, taking it as a bluff spawned from anger, which it kind of was. They were allowed to leave. Bakugo and Todoroki returned to class with both of them having bandages on. Bakugo had more on, though, mainly on his face. Yo, Bakubro. Bakugo flinched as Kirishima approached. He muttered to himself, Baku what? What is it? He asked as Todoroki ignored Torumomo's attempt at checking on him, which made her frown. You doing all right? Kirishima asked with concern. That Midoriya guy is a serious piece of work. Right? Shiro said. Being bullied as a kid is no excuse for what he did to you and Todoroki, he went too far. Bakugo sighed. It's my fault that he's this way, I suppose If you say you deserved that over-the-top beating for what you did as a toddler, then I'll stab you. Jiro huffed, threateningly pointing her jacks at him. Bakugo promptly shuts up. Midoriya took what you did and dished it back tenfold. Two wrongs don't make a right, Tokiyami says. Bakugo smirks, turning away from everyone. He wasn't used to this feeling. The closest thing to it was the constant praise he was showered with in his childhood due to his strong and flashy quirk, but Izuku's all-might level strength caused that to stop. He still feels as if he deserves Midoriya's beating a little bit. After all, he knew that he didn't plan on stopping before Izuku's quirk appeared. Who knows if it never had? Would the roles have been reversed if Izuku never changed? He'd never know. Time passes. Class 1A elect a class president in Momo Yaoyorozu and Tenya Iida as VP. A panic ensues during lunch, which only ended up being the press. The panic was put to a stop thanks to the combined effort of Momo and Iida's quick thinking. On Wednesday in the afternoon, everyone noticed Izuku's absence. Everyone was sort of relieved, but then the most unexpected person asked about this. Hey, Teach. Bakugo says. Where's Midoriya? He's been suspended during heroics class. Instead of being here, he'll be with Hound Dog. Hopefully, his violent tendencies and his grudge against you will be put to rest sometime during this month or the next, Aizawa explained. Anyway, today's heroics lesson will be rescue training. Aizawa proceeds to explain what they'd be doing very briefly before they get on the bus and head to the facility in which they'd be training. The ride to the USJ was quite lively. As soon as the conversation was shifted to the topic of one Izuku Midoriya by Kaminari, it was bluntly shut down by Kyokujiro. He had been essentially banished by the class. The topic jumped around and changed until they arrived. As they enter and admire the place, 13 gave a speech about the danger of certain kinds of quirks, which Bakugo listened attentively to. And then the lights flickered. Out of a purple, swirling portal came a massive army of villains. The leader appeared to be with hands all over his body. The army was terrifying, but what really shook the students in Aizawa and 13 were the three definitely inhuman creatures. One was tall and muscular with a bird's beak, and the second was lankier but with sharp claws, talons, and huge dark wings, both of which were twice as big as its own body, and the third one was a humanoid spider woman with 6 arms, 5 eyes with one on her forehead, and 2 legs. Strangely, she was also holding 2 teapots and cups. Despite the female one being the smallest of the trio, she exuded a deadly aura that singled her out. She clearly wasn't the deadliest of the 3 physically, but she more than likely had the most lethal abilities. The female looked to the one with wings. Through another portal, they appeared before Class 1A and the duo of Aizawa and 13. The Spider Girl scans the class, most of them shrinking under her analytical gaze. And then the teachers, but for less time. Not here. Her voice was low and somewhat raspy but had a bit of a courteous and sweetness to it. Aizawa was put off by her looking at the students first before them. "You talk?" 13 asked. "Of course." The Spider Woman answered. "Though this one," she points to her winged companion, "as well as the third one do not. I'll get right to the point." Her faces melts and morphs just a little bit, putting further enunciation on her lack of humanity. "Where is the esteemed record breaker? These people want Midoriya," everyone thought. "Hey, Muffet!" The hand villain, the leader, shouted impatiently. The now named Muffet turned over to him. "Yes, Shigaraki? Is what his name there or what? He is not, and neither is All Might." He groaned. "Waste of my damn evening, Kurogiri." Class 1A were scattered. Hound Dog and Izuku conversed while Nezu sat next to the former, listening in. But in the middle of their therapeutic dialogue, Izuku flinches and looked out the window. "Are you sure you should be prioritizing me over your other students?" "Yes," Nezu answered. "Now then, seriously, you." Hound Dog growled, but it was less out of malice and more out of force of habit. "This is something that must happen, Midoriya. You are not getting out of this." Truth be told, Izuku was actually bluffing. The first time around, anyway, his metafolk senses alerted him of something happening with 1A. But this was the neutral route, and some players on both sides had to die. Just to see what happens, he chose not to intervene. As he spoke with Hound Dog about his life, Izuku divided his attention to a fight going on. Somewhere in the city, All Might was fighting 2 opponents, and they were pushing him to the edge. Eventually, their talk concludes, and Izuku was allowed to leave, but he left Nezu and Hound Dog with some parting words. "If only I was let off my leash earlier," he muttered as he left the room. Everyone died. All except for Kyoka Jiro, Mina Ishido, and Momo Yaoyorozu, who were cornered by a group of villains in the ruins zone. They had been battered and worn down by the villains. They were way out of their league. Aizawa was killed by the female spider Nomu known as Muffet. His quirk didn't help him after his eyes were gouged out by her. Her poison, which was apparently meant to be used to slow down Izuku and All Might, killed him in seconds. 13 was poisoned and dropped in the flood zone by Kurogiri, where she was torn apart by the villains there in front of Mineta and Asui. The other students put up a good fight, but it wasn't enough. They were outnumbered, overwhelmed, and murdered in various ways. They didn't have the experience to deal with this. Todoroki and Bakugo put up by the best fight by a country mile, but alas, they couldn't beat Muffet and the other Nomu even while working together. The only reason Jiro, Mina, and Momo survived were due to dumb luck and Jiro's quirk being able to pick out where the villains were, thus allowing them to avoid them entirely, almost entirely, anyway. "It looks like this is where your story ends, girlies," a mutant snake villain said. "No All Might and no record breaker to save you. Odd that neither showed up, but I suppose we lucked out. Now then," he slithered closer. "If you want to make this easier on yourselves, you 3 could. You know." Someone tapped him on the shoulder, and before he could turn around, he was hit on the back of his head and paralyzed. It was Izuku Midoriya. "Hi." He said to the girl. I was in my forced chat with Hound Dog and the principal, in case you were curious. Momo spoke. How? How did you know to come here? Had a hunch. And I have super hearing. I tried warning the principal and Hound Dog and I wanted to rush over here, but, you know, I was suspended and shoved in counseling. They didn't even bother actually confirming if I was bluffing or not. Everyone went quiet. A villainess with electrical wires for hair spoke, bewildered. You weren't here. Because you were suspended? Yeah. The villains began laughing. The girls' worlds fell to pieces, and their hearing deafened as their vision zeroed in on Izuku and the villains. They all thought one thing. All of our friends died, and we almost died, all because they didn't bother spending a few minutes making sure Midoriya was wrong? This wasn't a small and understandable mistake in their operations, this was a fuck-up of massive proportions. This wasn't reversible, nor was this something you could make up for with time or money. Their friends and teachers were all dead and would never come back. Anger, sadness, and denial. Their emotions were rapidly fluctuating. It was just so unbelievable. Why? How could they mess up so horribly? Izuku broke the neck of the laughing villainess by punching her in the face, killing her instantly. Almost immediately, he felt a little strange. He was stronger, slightly stronger. And his emotions were strange as well. It was like his capacity and/or willingness to hurt had increased ever so slightly. His level of violence was higher. What's wrong? Izuku states to the villains in a disturbingly undisturbed voice. It's not funny anymore. Come on. Give me a good laugh. Despite being scared, they all lunged at him with their quirks. Not only could Izuku take their hits without a problem, but he could dish out whatever they served tenfold. In the end, most were dead, and others were unconscious and maimed. Izuku's level of violence had increased 5 times from its base. The only functioning and uninjured villain left was the snake, who Izuku flipped over. He was terrified and unable to move. But Izuku doesn't kill him, he instead turned over to the girls. Jiro, Ashido, Yaoyorozu. Come here. They stood there, shaking and unresponsive. Come here. He can't move, he said more forcefully. They reluctantly approach him. Izuku instinctively unveils a new power he didn't have before. He reached for the air in front of him, and a small hole in space appeared. From it, he pulled out 3 worn daggers. Strange. He handed them to the 3 girls. Kill him. Momo shakes. What? Kill him. Mina speaks. Bebit, but what? I heard what this one said to you. And you know what he and the others intended to do to you 3 had I not showed up. Izuku glares at them with a gray expression. All of your friends are dead, as are your teachers. The killers are laughing, and what are you doing? Standing there clinging to your withered heroics. He shoved the 3 of them closer to the paralyzed snake villains. Justice and injustice, good and evil, the hero code, they don't matter anymore. All that matters are your emotions. What are your hearts and minds telling you? What do you want to do to the villains that hurt you without remorse? Izuku saw a stat number appearing above their heads. LV1. It increased for all 3 of them. 2, 4, 5, 7. They stopped shaking, and their tears dried. The snake villain turned pale as the girls looked down at him with neutral expressions. Please. He trembles in fear. I didn't. I was just. When you're hungry, you eat. When you're bored, you play. When you like someone, you talk with them more than others. And regardless of their face or occupation or motives, when someone hurts and/or threatens you, you don't stand there and take it. You hurt them back. Their LV spiked. It was at a staggering 15. Momo stabbed the villain first. It pierced his body deeply and drew blood. The villain screamed in pain. Then Jiro stabbed him. And then Mina. They took turns stabbing him, and they smiled toothlessly, reveling in his agony. It didn't take too long to kill him, but even after he was dead, they kept stabbing his corpse. After a few moments, they stopped and checked on the bodies of the other villains. A villainess who was missing a leg was crawling away slowly, crying her eyes out. Mina stepped in front of her. Wait. She said shakily. Mina flipped her over and sat on her chest, smiling at her. I have information. I can help you. Mina caressed her face, lowering her guard and using her quirk on her at maximum power. She screamed and struggled against her, but Mina expertly held her arms down with her knees. The villainess was a faceless corpse. Momo stepped on the back of a male villain with missing arms. He looked up at her nervously. "You're supposed to be a hero." He tried and failed at keeping a brave face. "Heroes don't kill." She took a knee and pointed her knife at his throat. Slowly, she presses down. And without warning, she stabbed him through the neck. Jiro heard a villain running away. She smirks. "Do a better job next time, Izuku." She went after him. She felt and was stronger and faster. It felt good, really good. She glides after him like an angel of death. Her feet don't even touch the ground, and then she slashed his Achilles, bringing him to the ground. She picked his chin up with her dagger and stabbed both of her jacks into his ears, causing his head to vibrate and swell intensely due to her quirk. She stepped away before his head exploded. She regrouped with Izuku and the girls. Izuku turned away as they just looked at each other. There was no turning back now, not that they wanted to. Momo tapped him and held up her dagger, smiling. "Where are the other villains?" "Let's leave them for now." Taken aback, an angry glint appeared in her eyes. "Excuse me? It's only gonna be for a few seconds. I'll drop you off and then come back and finish them all myself. Except for the leader." Mina points her dagger at him. "Why can't we do it?" "Because with everyone else dead, UA will assume you three were kidnapped. And with how strong I am, and with how I'll go about things, they'll think it was me and not you three. In other words, we'll be faking our deaths." Jiro finished. "And given your track record, all of the heat will be on you." "Exactly. I'll leave the leader and a few dozen others alive for you to hunt down at your leisure and as a cover." Mina begins stepping over to him. Izuku wasn't afraid of her lack of expression. In fact, he was quite thrilled at the unpredictability of this route thus far. She stopped when she was right in his face. She touched his face. Genuinely a little confused, Izuku looked away. Mina held his chin and made him look at her. "We're gonna have words later." It wasn't a question, it was a statement. Izuku nods. He dropped them off in an abandoned shopping mall and went back to the USJ. It didn't take very long to beat most of the villains to near death and kill others. Shigaraki, Kurogiri, Muffet, and the other two Nomu escaped, abandoning their forces entirely. In the end, about 60% of the villains that attacked were killed by Izuku, while 20% lost a limb or three, and the rest made it out. Izuku leaves, curious as to what will come of this route. Returning to the abandoned shopping mall, Izuku sat on the floor while Momo and Jiro sat next to each other on a crate. Mina, she sat on Izuku's lap. Another genuine surprise, but one that was welcome for a few reasons. "Hey, Ashido?" Izuku raised a brow as Mina turned her head to look at him. "Are you feeling alright?" Izuku looked at their stats. Their LV is particular. All of them were at 15, whereas Izuku's was at 12. He didn't really know what that number truly meant or what its max was, but he assumed he'd learn later. "Yeah," Mina answered. "Why do you ask? You're sitting on me." She looks down before looking back up at him, and? Fair enough. "Anyway," Jiro says. "What's the plan? Because, personally, I want to see those villains die. As well as those at UA who stopped Izuku from saving us." "I second that," Momo said. Mina backs them both. "The plan? We bide our time." Izuku wrapped her arms around Mina, making her squeak. "And I train the three of you up. Since you're so weak and all." Mina unexpectedly pulled his head forward by tugging his shirt forward. She smiles. "And what happens after you train us, Izuku?" "That, as well as what happens after all of those twisted villains that killed your class are dead, depends on you three." Mina grinned. "Exactly. Shigaraki returns to base without injury, but that's not to say something else wasn't wounded." "Damn it. Please calm down, Shigaraki," Muffet said. Kurogiri reciprocates. A voice from a screen on the wall speaks. "Tamura." "Impossible." Shigaraki kicked a chair to pieces. That brat. He's impossibly strong, master." "Oh," the voice said. "That little punk killed almost all us. Every low-level scrub we brought to overwhelm All Might and that record-breaking brat put together. He killed almost all of them all by himself." Shigaraki growled. "And you know what's worse? He was holding back. Definitely, I could tell. He could have killed all of us, but he didn't. Even with everything we brought, he still defeated us. He decayed another chair to dust out of rage. I didn't want to risk losing the Nomu or Kurogiri, so I escaped. But he let us. He just left. That brat. Tamura. The voice said. How many of those UA first-year students did you kill? All of them. He answers. Including the 2 pros there, Eraserhead and 13, as well as our mole. Then you came out victorious. UA and Hero Society will undoubtedly crumble. Once All Might is dead, we can finish Izuku Midoriya at our leisure. What say you, Tamura? The fledgling villain thinks. My attack will increase our representative dramatically. For now, I think I should wait for the fallout and enjoy the spoils of war. This will bring in new recruits. After all, what villain wouldn't want to be on the team that brought down UA? We'll attack the brat later. He broke All Might's entrance exam record, but he's no All Might. He couldn't see the grin on the mastermind's face after he said that. I believe we should wait as well, Tamura. After all, patience is a virtue, and with enough time, anything is possible. The next few months were a nightmare for Hero Society and society in general. UA was done for. After the deaths of an entire class of students, not only did almost every student get pulled out by their parents, but they were also sued to the ground. That, on top of the HPSC preying on them in their weakened state, led to the best hero school on the planet going under. But not only was UA gone, but All Might had been killed as well. Apparently, he had been in a fight against 2 extremely powerful inhuman creatures. He won, but later died of his injuries. Endeavor was named the new #1 hero, but no one really liked him. He didn't have the same reassuring presence his predecessor had. Even though other hero schools existed, such as Shiketsu, crime rates skyrocket. One for All, the symbol of peace, and the greatest hero school were lost. The people needed new hope, a new overpowering force to restore some kind of order to society. It wasn't gonna be Endeavor, nor the Hero Commission. It was. You guys are coming along nicely. Ever since that day, the group moved into a nice house they stole from a group of villains. They were in the house's home gym. Nicely, huh? Momo sniped. The 3 of us are on the ground, sweating and panting, while you aren't even winded. Yup. Mina said, quietly licking her lips. Well, I have to use the bathroom. I'll be right back. He leaves. A few moments later, the girls all look at each other. Mina speaks. You know you 2 can play with Izuku too, right? Play? Momo blushes for an instant. I saw how you 2 were looking at me. You were envious whenever I did things with Izuku. The way I touched him during training and such. He doesn't reciprocate, but he basically lets me do whatever I want with him without putting up a fuss. He won't fight back if you come on to him, so just do it already, it'll be fun. Jiro rolled her eyes. Why would I want to do any of your doing? For fun, of course. I hate the villains that attacked us, so I'm gonna kill every last one of them. Mina answered. I can't be a hero anymore. I don't want to, not after what happened. At this point, I simply want to live happily and freely with everyone I hate burning in hell. And my happiness lies in you 2 and Izuku. I guess. Jiro shrugs. I'm too deep into this to try going back into heroism anyway. As long as I can still make music, I'll be happy. What about you, Momo? I suppose I'll be happy that I can read good books, and spend time with you guys, she said, her cheeks tinted red. Then that settles it. Mina says. After the villains are dead, we'll live as we please and stay out of the way of things. She smiled. And then we'll all get married. For the first time in a long while, they were genuinely happy. Then, Izuku returned with multiple bottles of water, which they took and drank. You 3 are probably gonna need something to help you against those villains. After all, unlike us, they have resources to use to strengthen themselves. They'll undoubtedly be stronger, Izuku says. He returned the worn daggers to them. But he also gives them each a heart locket. They felt more durable after putting it on. Is this your way of flirting? Momo inquired bluntly. No, Jiro asked. Izuku. You're capable of wiping out every villain in Japan on your own, aren't you? Izuku smirked. If I could, would you want me to? Jiro smirked back. No, she then approached, taking Mina's words to heart. You're gonna do something for me, Izuku. Izuku heard all of what they said earlier. Humans are pretty interesting. After the traumatic attack, She probably believes the only way to regain control of her life is to try controlling me. She wants domination. It's adorable. Sure. Izuku says. What will I be doing for you? Jiro widened her eyes as if she were caught off guard by the response. But she went with it, sitting him down against the wall and sitting between his legs. You worked me down to the bone, Izuku. I was a good girl, so you're rewarding me with a massage. She presses her back up against him. You better get nice and deep in my muscles. Izu. Otherwise, I'll never ever forgive you. She was a little miffed by her lack of reaction but calmed down when he started massaging her. Izu? Momo asked. Anyways, we should discuss a plan. Izuku, do you think we can handle the group of villains or whatever they call themselves? League of Villains, he said. And yeah, as long as you three are together and aren't facing the leader, you should be able to handle yourselves just fine. But just in case. He stopped massaging one of Jiro's shoulders to show her something. A green slip of paper. Paper? It's special. Just like the necklaces and daggers you have. He placed it on her lap and gave one to Mina and Momo. If you're heavily injured, bite down on it and tear it with your hand. What will happen if we do that? Jiro asked, to which Izuku annoyingly doesn't answer. As I said earlier, I'll fight the boss. You three will deal with everyone else. It shouldn't be too hard. That's enough. Jiro shifts around, straddling Izuku and facing him. I assume we're gonna be attacking tomorrow. Izuku nods. After I find their base OT operations, of course. You know, Jiro's face slowly closed in on his. I've never had a boyfriend or even a boy crush on me before. Almost always, I've been called flat, average, or scrawny. I've never felt the touch of a romantic love either. So, Jiro begins kissing him. Oh, there were 7 quirks that All for One wanted, and he'd likely need those 7 if he wanted to permanently take over the world. The first one was One for All, but with All Might being dead, he couldn't take it back, unfortunately. The second one was Erasure. But Eraserhead was dead. Not that it mattered. In his state, he couldn't use it himself anyway. The third one was New Order. This one he was actually able to get. He used one of Tamura's newest recruits, a girl named Himiko Toga. She was sent to the US and infiltrated Star's camp using her quirk. She was able to poison her with a special sleeping drug, and from there, it was easy to take the quirk from her unconscious body and kill her after. The fourth one was Search. Ragdoll and the WWPC were weak, so taking it was rather easy. The fifth one was Overhaul, which he already had a copy of. In fact, half of Tamura's quirk was Overhaul. He couldn't use it to fix himself since it was sort of hard to use, and he couldn't and wouldn't give away the power to kill with a touch. That's what the sixth, Rewind, was for. Just in case Shigaraki didn't work out, he planned on using this quirk to wring a few more decades of use out of his own body. Acquiring it was easy. In fact, the girl begged for it to be removed. It reminded him of the good old days. The seventh and final quirk needed for him to ascend to godhood, or demon lordhood, was whatever Izuku Midoriya's quirk was. Based on what his now dead mole said, it was some sort of strength enhancer. He wasn't interested at first, even after hearing that he broke All Might's record in UA's entrance exams. But there was something about Izuku that bugged him. He had a sixth sense for quirks, and he just knew that there was more to it than that. For one, after some digging around, AFO discovered that Izuku was registered quirkless, which obviously wasn't true. A quirkless couldn't have attained a body strong enough to kill most of the villains at the USJ. It was impossible for a quirkless to move as fast as Shigaraki said he could. Izuku was smarter than he let on, AFO assessed. But it was painfully obvious that super strength was but a facet of his quirk. That fact only made him more curious. What else could he do? What was he hiding? He had to find out, no ifs, ands, or buts. With New Order, Search, Overhaul, and Rewind, he should be able to beat him no matter what else he'd be able to do. The plan was simple. Shigaraki and the core members of the League would fight him first, and with that, along with Search, he'd assess his weaknesses. Afterward, if needed, he'd take over his body. With OFA gone, there was no need to wait until he had a strong enough will. He was doing relatively fine as of now, mostly thanks to Rewind. His body was restored back to its prime. Do I or don't I take Tamura's body? He stared up at the ceiling of his room. The new love base was a massive mansion that could house a couple hundred people. A prize earned from conquering Detanirot. Give me a sign, universe. Do I or don't I take over that annoying boy's body? Then, with his many sensory quirks, AFO heard someone break into the base and attack his companions. Yeah, companions. Someone had infiltrated the base and were attacking the League of Villains. It was a small group, so he wasn't gonna bother with them. But the more people he heard being killed, the more interested he got. So he goes down there to check. Hey, gang. What's happening? And there he was. Izuku Midoriya and 3 girls were attacking his companions. Toga was being held in a chokehold by Mina. Dabi was confronted by Momo. And Jiro was facing off against Spinner. And by the looks of it, Izuku was facing Shigaraki, neither of which threw an attack before he arrived. With one of his favorite quirks, Ominous Presence, he stopped the fighting. His companions looked horrified, and some even passed out, and while Izuku's girls looked a bit frightened, Izuku himself was unfazed. So you're the one behind it all, huh? That's right. AFO grinned. Your classmates, teachers, your school, and the society you held so dear are all gone because of yours truly. It was Tamura mostly, but I served as a hand of guidance to him. He expected anger and rage, and that was what he got from the girls, but not Izuku. I thought you'd be bigger, he said. I expected a lot more things, honestly. You seem like the type that... I don't know. He grins. Has issues with a certain family member? This got a reaction out of him. Shigaraki speaks. What are you two? He suddenly fell unconscious, which got another reaction out of AFO. I didn't do that. Was that this boy's quirk? You're a little uneasy. Was it the family thing? He trails off. Don't worry. I just happen to know a few things, is all. You know things, AFO appeared behind Izuku and grabbed him by the neck. New order. If Izuku Midoriya moves an inch from this spot, all of his vital organs will cease functioning. Izuku was a little caught off guard. A human with the power to warp reality? I mean, it's pitifully weak, but this new order sounds like it could be a half-decent meta. Not that it mattered. If he died, he could easily bring himself back. Just about every time manipulating meta could cheat death. AFO was confident. Now that that's done, tell me, how do you know? Know what, my villainous friend? Of the dirty secrets involving your quirk, truth is, he didn't know anything. He was snowballing. Bluffing would get some truths out of him, which would increase the effectiveness of his bluffs, rinse, and repeat. Yeah. Could it be that I was wrong about my brother's quirk being lost after All Might's death? Was it passed on to you perchance? Maybe, maybe not. All you need to know is that your brother doesn't like you very much, nor do the others. They, like myself, are eager to see you die. Too bad for them. You can't move. AFO grabbed Shigaraki by the back of his neck. New order. Tamura Shigaraki's body and consciousness will yield to me. And he then gave him everything, all of his quirk and powers. He forced his soul into Tamura's body, taking him over permanently. You look pretty gross, you know that? Izuku sniped. AFO, Shigaraki, whoever he was, chuckled. I'll undoubtedly look better once I crack the code behind your quirk by taking it. He placed his hand on his head, except his pinky, which was raised. The League of Villains and every villain in general watching this grinning. Yeah, take that bastard's quirk, boss. Take his. Momo pales. No. Suddenly, AFO's hand bursts into bright white flames. He backed away, screaming as the flame made its way up his arm. He cuts it off, but what remained, his body began burning away all the same. Izuku smirked. He was worried for a bit, but the sight reassured him. He mentally checked on his meta and found that it hadn't been changed or weakened one bit. What a joke. Everyone looked at him, as if someone like you could handle my power. You'd have better luck surviving in space without equipment. The girls stared on in awe as AFO died. I don't know where you'll end up, but I hope your soul is still intact. That way, you can look back and feel regret. Metas and quirks were similar but far more different than any human could comprehend. Under no circumstances could a quirk ever hope to alter or copy a meta. Izuku moves. Because of his death, the effects of New Order were gone as well. I believe this is our victory, villains. A fire lit up in the girls' hearts in another place as the fight continued, which they won with ease thanks to Izuku. Izuku's LV was 16, and the girls were at 18. Before the heroes arrived, they took all of the villains' resources. They were sitting on millions physically and digitally. They went home victoriously. They won, and Ua and their friends were avenged. And now they could simply live. They were rich. After getting home, Izuku kicks back on the couch. All in a day's work. And then he notes the girls looking at him, their expressions neutral. Something wrong? Your quirk, Jiro says. What is it? Don't worry about it. Izuku tried getting up, but she stopped him by straddling him. No, she said, firmly pushing him back down. I was suspicious, but what happened back there basically confirmed it. Your quirk can't be super strength. Suspicious? Since when? What made you suspicious of me? Bakugo told us that you never updated your quirk registration. That was on purpose, wasn't it? I mean, what's stopping you from just saying your quirk is super strength and ending it? There, you're hiding something, Jiro said. Secondly, my quirk grants me better hearing as well. And from the little time I've spent around you, well, I've caught small hearings of your heartbeat. Ayan. She looks down, and her breath shakes. A few moments later, she looked up. Her pupils were now shaped like hearts. The sound of it did things to me. She squirmed uncontrollably. Izuku couldn't tell if her grinding on him was intentional or not. It made me feel warm before, but after everything that happened today, that effect got stronger. Ha. Her expression twisted into one of love, but it wasn't wholesome or anything. She looked more like psychotic stalker than anything. A reflection of her trauma wearing down her mind. You're gonna wear yourself to me, she said. To us. All three of us, and NLY us. You're gonna take responsibility for what you did to me and bend the knee to all of us for the rest of your life, okay? There it was. Izuku could accept right then and there, but not yet. He wanted to see what she'd do out of morbid curiosity. He says no. Jiro's expression instantly changes. Her eyes lose their life. No, without another word, she plugged her jacks into his neck and tried killing him by blowing up his head with sound. It seems that on this route, the girls lived by their urges and desires more than anything else. Whether or not they were more violent and impulsive because of their LV, their trauma, or what Izuku said to them, he didn't know. Save loaded. Sure. Izuku says knowingly. I mean, 3 hot girls and little old me for the rest of my life? Who could refuse that? Jiro bites her lip. That's a good boy. On both sides of Izuku were the girls, who clung tightly to each of arms. Mina whispers in his right ear, we're gonna break you, Izuku. And Momo whispers in his left. All of that awesome power doesn't matter. Your body, your mind, your soul itself. As long as we have it, we're gonna do everything in our power to break it all. Mina speaks. You're all ours now. We're gonna play with the rest of our lives, and there is no way out of it. We're gonna have so much fun together. Jiro kisses him for 5 straight minutes. Forever. Then Mina does so. Forever. And finally, Momo Yaoyorozu, forever. Izuku doesn't bother counting how many times he heard the word, forever, that day. A year passes. The strange disappearance of the League of Villains was celebrated warily. Repairs to society began, but in the background, everyone searched for the missing villains with no success. Another year passes. Then another 3. Ua has returned, but it wasn't called that anymore. Created and funded by the HPSC, the institution created in its place was known as the Commission Academy. Everyone who worked there was connected to the HPSC. Eventually, it was found that the love were all murdered. Rumors of infighting rose, but that didn't seem like the reason they were all dead. All of them had varying amounts of stab wounds. Endeavor remained as the #1 hero. A decade passes. Commission Academy was shut down after a mysterious person confirmed the many bad rumors surrounding the place. Rumors such as excessive training, poor treatment of students, an uncomfortable environment for females, and many, many others. In the end, Shiketsu succeeded Ua as the greatest hero school on the planet. The people who put down the love weren't found and probably never would be. If it were heroes, the heroes would say it was them. If it were villains, they would have proudly proclaimed it. So it was a third party who wiped out the greatest and most evil villain society has ever known. It became a myth of sorts. Just like the mystery of the late All Might's Quirk, the saviors of Japan were widely discussed and debated. Their first guess was the mysterious record breaker, Izuku Midoriya. Was it him? No, he had a strength quirk, and the villains mostly died of stab wounds. Speaking of Izuku, no one knew what became of him. The most widely accepted answer was that he simply fled the country after UA shut down. Little did they know, he was thriving to some degree. He and his girlfriends, now wives, lived together in harmony. Harmony, being used loosely, as they never quite grew out of their eccentric natures. They never had any children. Momo brought that possibility up only after they had sex with him more than 100 times each. They never got pregnant, and they never bothered Izuku about it since he never bothered them. They assumed he was infertile. They spent every waking moment of their days together. Sleeping, showering, everything except for using the bathroom. At least 2 of them did it together. Society was somewhat back to normal after everything that happened. Crimes never dropped to below when All Might was the #1 hero, much to Endeavor's annoyance. One day, when all of the wives were asleep, Izuku sat on the edge of their shared king-sized bed. He receives a call from an unknown number. Weird. No one usually called any of them. They worked out frequently, but they didn't work in jobs. Plus, they rarely went outside nowadays. He lets it go to the voicemail, and moments later, he plays it. I suppose I should have expected that. It was Nezu. Well, we'll just leave a message. Hey, Inko was there. So, you're the one who killed all of those villains, probably. My one and only child. I just called to tell you. I love you. It's strange. It's because of you leaving that I was forced to become better. I worked out, became healthier, and even went to a Quirk gym to become stronger. With Nezu's help, I became as powerful as a ranked hero. Not ranked as in the top 10 or 50 or even 100, but ranked. I sat and watched as what was left of my beloved baby boy faded away. And it's because I just sat on the sidelines that you ran away. Because of me, you were suspended, and those children died, which caused everything to change for the worst. If I had only done more, stepped in earlier, I could have saved you. I could have saved you. I'm sorry, okay? I get it. It's my fault. It's all my fault. You hate me, I know. But, please, just this once, please come home. If you're alive, if you're hearing this, I want to see you again. If you don't, then call me back. I'll do anything. I just want to hear your voice again, just one more time before even if it's just for a few seconds. I don't want the last of my family to disappear forever. I love you. Even if you hate me or despise me, I love you. That will never change. Goodbye. Death, neutral root. Izuku quite liked this timeline and this test run of my abilities. Something as small as him being suspended from UA on a certain day caused 3 girls to break mentally. That, and the temporary collapse of society. All because of his choices. It didn't surprise him. Whenever a metafolk went down into the lower plane and into a continuity, they were usually at the center of everything that happened there. But he was different. Izuku could go back, make different choices, befriend different people, and truly do everything and anything he wanted with this world and its people. Nothing and no one could stop him. He was also incredibly unbelievably glad his mother got him an unlimited pass to be here. He couldn't imagine just leaving after doing only one route. He wanted more. This route was nice. Sex with the girls, especially Momo and her well-developed hourglass body, was always pleasurable for him. He didn't even have to worry about accidentally making children due to his pass. That ended up putting his mind somewhere else. Girls and pairings. He had gotten his fill of Momo, Jiro, and Mina on this route. He knew their bodies and quirks well and probably wouldn't pair himself with them again. Momo was always attractive, and that didn't change in this timeline. In her prime, she became super busty with a round, heavy ass. Her skin was smooth, and she always took care of herself and maintained her beauty. Jiro wasn't as buxom as Momo, but she had her own qualities that Izuku liked. She had nice, wide hips and a firm ass that could take a good pounding, and though she was relatively flat-chested even as an adult, she more than made up for it with her mouth. Her kissing and sucking were top tier. And Mina. In a way, she had both of the girls' best traits. She had the sexiness of Momo and the tightness of Jiro. She was athletic and flexible, which almost made her Izuku's favorite, but his favorite was Momo. Humans really are succulent creatures. Izuku thought. Such variety from just one continuity. Again, he appreciated his position and his powers. He could have his fill of all the girls he wanted and no one would ear no. Next time, he would pursue others from Class 1A. He wonders what he was gonna do next. How would he go about his next route? The answer was simple. What if he was never suspended? What if he was there at the USJ when those villains attacked? He could easily save everyone and prevent everything that happened in this timeline to happen in another. Momo, Jiro, and Mina wouldn't go crazy, but what would happen? He'd find out in due time. But before that, he wanted to enjoy this timeline one more time before going back. Asterisk, it was the morning. Izuku awakens and finds that only Momo and Jiro were in bed with him. His super hearing picks up movement from downstairs. Without making a sound, he heads down there and finds Mina doing some morning exercises in the living room. Wearing only gray yoga shorts, of course. The four of them rarely wore actual clothes around the house. Azuzu? Mina noticed him staring. I didn't mean to wake you up, hubby. It's fine. He sat down on the couch behind her, watching as she unfortunately got up from a split she was doing. But not before giving him a few more seconds of eye candy. I need your help with this next stretch, Azuzu. Come here. Right. Mina was on her back with her legs together and pointed high in the air. Knowing how this would end, Izuku pressed herself against her. Spread my legs out. She instructs him. Izuku does so, seeing the pretty face her toned, luscious legs were hiding. She smiled. Keep going, dummy. Until my ankles are on the ground. When they were on the ground, Mina winced a little. That's a good boy. You're always so obedient. Now then, weigh my legs down and keep them from moving. Honey. Izuku placed his hands on her inner thighs, lightly pushing them down to keep her legs still. Just like tea. That. Noticing her slip-up, Izuku looks down. Your pussy is twitching and throbbing, Mina. He moves his hands dangerously close to it. Oh yeah? Mina opened her arms and smiled. And just what are you gonna do about it? Izuku smiles back. It looks painful, Mina. I'll help you out, so just relax for me. Mina does so, letting out the breath she was unknowingly holding. Izuku starts massaging her, tenderly squeezing and kneading her inner thighs. There was no way for Mina to resist or tense against Izuku's attack since her legs were held down. All she could do was let herself moan and be violated by her lover. As time passed, a wet spot formed on her shorts that slowly grew in size. Izuku pauses before slipping his hands into her shorts and toying with the sides of her nether regions and her clitoris with his fingertips. NNGH. Damn you. Izu, torturing your beloved mistress like this, Mina pants tiredly. If you don't make me cum in the next 3 minutes. I'll make damn sure you regret doing this, I swear. Izuku kept going, and right before 3 entire minutes passed, Izuku shoved 2 of his fingers in her snatch, causing the dam to shatter and for her to orgasm. It wasn't anything special, considering she'd been fucking Izuku and the other girls for more than a decade now. Gee good. She comes again, but it was smaller than the previous orgasmic reaction. The stain on her shorts grew nonetheless. Good boy. Good job. Now, what kind of mistress would I be if I didn't return the favor for my dear husband? Izuku presses down on her, the impressively sized raging tent in his boxers flush against her hungry womanhood. Both of their respective reproductive organs tingle furiously as they, as well as their chests, collide and rest against each other. Izuku groped her perfect bust and pinched her purple-ish nipples. He kisses her before she can squeal too loud and wake the other girls. Mina tore off her shorts and melted his boxers, allowing him to finally do their favorite daily activity. Rough and raunchy sex. The experience was as pleasurable as it's always been. After filling Mina to the brim on the floor, they moved to the couch. Mina sits him down and parked her large twin pink moons on his crotch. Izuku treats her roughly, groping and thoroughly spanking the rear before him as Mina rode him reverse cowgirl. As usual, they went as long as they possibly could. Damn it. Mina couldn't move, and thus was defenseless to Izuku cuddling her and playing with her alluring, plump ass. Even after so many years of us being together, I still can't bring you to the point of being unable to move. It always ends up being me. Hours later, and Izuku was still raring to go somewhat. What would you do if our positions were reversed currently? Mina grins. I'd be teasing you with the ass you love so much, relentlessly. For hours. You'd probably cry, at which point I'd lap up your tears and keep going. Izuku slaps the aforementioned rear. Too bad for you. I could go for weeks at a time. Perks of being superhuman. Mina pouts at him playfully. Cheater. Asterisk in the middle of the day, Kyoka Jiro was messing around with a music app on her phone. While in bed, her yoga shorts were red as opposed to Mina's gray. The way they clung to her wide hips made her that much sexier. 10 million monthly listeners. Go me, she said to herself, and then Izuku suddenly appeared, snuggling onto her smooth bare chest. Jiro, startled, states, "Geez, Green, you're as fast as always." "Hey," he said, planting his face downward. "You smell nice." Jiro runs a hand through his hair. "The sky is blue, grass is green, and your hair is fluffy. Anyway, what do you want? Are you busy?" Izuku asked, looking up to meet her deadpan face. "You know you don't have to be subtle about what you want, right? Lord knows that we girls aren't." Jiro says flatly. "You wanna fuck me, and I want to bask in the glory of my millions of monthly listeners while listening to music, so we'll do both." She puts her headphones on as the first song plays. Izuku doesn't move her, he instead moves his head, and what as he placed his mouth around her nipple, sucking at it hungrily while nipping at the other one. Izuku moves himself upward, continuously pleasuring his wife while she relaxed. "Fuck. Aye. Jiro closes her eyes and calms down, but the blush on her face was still prominent. She relaxes her body, surrendering every inch of it to Izuku. "This is NGH." Izuku jammed her fingers into her tight snatch. She gnashes her thighs together as he does this, subconsciously thrusting her hips into his digits, mewling like a whore in heat. Or like Mirko. "Oh, fuck the music." She threw off her headphones angrily, forcing Izuku's head deeper into her chest. Jiro wrapped her legs around Izuku, fervently coming all over his hand for a few seconds. "You're a god with your hands, you know that?" "I could be considered a god in general for other reasons," Izuku thought. "I wouldn't be a good husband if I weren't." Jiro kisses him. "I may as well reciprocate since you worked so hard and all. Pets are obligated to receive treats." Izuku was on his back, and Jiro was between his legs. "I may not have Momo's and Mina's curves, but it's undeniable that I give the best head out of all of us." She licks her lips, hungrily looking down at the piece of meat her husband was packing. "Isn't that right?" The way her lips and mouth vacuumed around his cock was extremely visually appealing, and the force at which she sucked him was appealing physically. It takes a few long minutes, but Izuku grabs her by the hair and shoots his potent seed down her gullet. Jiro expertly swallows his steaming white ropes in huge, audible gulps. She sucks for a bit longer so as to wrong out any extra of her favorite treat before removing herself from his phallus with a sexy pop. "Hey," Jiro plants a kiss on the tip of her husband's dick. "I heard you pounding the hell out of Mina earlier." "Another." "So. Another. I know that. And one more," getting the beloved organ angrily pulsing again. "You aren't done yet." Many mating presses and love bites later, Jiro was physically scarred, overflowing and out cold. While she was passed out, Izuku felt up her odi multiple times over, ingraining every inch of it into his mind. Asterisk it was the end of the day, and downstairs was Momo Yaoyorozu and Izuku. They were watching TV together. Momo was, of course, sitting next to him and hugging his arm, wearing black yoga shorts and nothing else. "Momo?" "Yeah?" she asked. "What, if you had the power to control time, what would you do?" "What would I do? What brought this on? I'm curious." "If I had power over time itself, well..." Momo drags a finger across his arm. "I'd dissect you." That got a little dark. Not literally, of course, but almost literally. Momo grins. "Never mind. Kinda. If I had power over the force of time, I would go back and study you and your body. Especially your body." Momo got onto her husband's lap, running her hands all over his body without a care. "All of your weaknesses, tics, secrets. I'd drill them into my head. And then I would recreate the events that brought us here, and then I'd break you into a proper possession of mine. Or, well, ours." "Possession, Don't pretend like you wouldn't do the same," she said, giggling. "If you could go back in time whenever you wanted, I bet you'd lay the different girls from Ua Asui's tongue, the mysteries of Hagakure, and Uraraka's skin-tight costume. You'd indulge in all of them. All because you could, and because no one would ever know or be able to stop you. I mean, controlling time is the greatest power one could have. The power over consequences. Power over everyone and everything in the world. There was a pause. I'm a little jealous. Jealous? Of what? Time manipulation. That's your quirk, right? Izuku was a little speechless. How did she? No matter. He decides to be honest. That's right. Izuku says. I can make save points like in a video game, along with a few other things. I could go back and do everything again as if it had never happened. No one except for me would remember. How did you know? I can't think of what else it could be and why you would hide it. You probably think we'd harass you into going back and saving our fallen class. That, and since you'd be using your quirk anyways, you didn't want to bother. You're right. Izuku laughs a little bit. I mean, there are things you still don't know, such as the fact that I'm an alien, but you're still mostly right about me. That got her, and after a little think, Momo seems to connect a few dots. I see. Any more questions? How many times have you used your powers to go back? Not as many as you think. This is the first real route I'm doing. Next time, I'll go back and see what would have happened had I not been suspended. Momo stares at him before laughing. She laughed hard for a good minute before cooling down. You're a godly alien with time powers. The most powerful force my world and this timeline will ever see. Your will, no matter how much we may hate it, will be exerted upon everyone and everything in your path, all for your entertainment. I'm called a metafolk. There are more of us, some stronger and weaker than me, but I haven't discovered the limits of my meta yet, so who knows how that will change. Momo glances away, pondering something. I've decided. Decided. I'm gonna claim you. I don't know how your race does things, but I'm willing to bet that not many of them have true wives from other planets. No, Momo was surprised by the cold rejection. You're a human, for starters. We're only allowed to procreate with others of our kind. And even if we were allowed to genuinely hang around humans, even with quirks, you don't live forever like we do. So it wouldn't be worth it. Momo, now having her perspective flipped, was a little heartbroken. She seemed to come to a conclusion, but whatever it was, she didn't tell Izuku. I don't expect you to limit yourself to just the three of us. Hell, with your powers, I expect you to breed every hot girl you can. But Momo pressed herself against Izuku tightly. I'll be the best woman you'll ever have. Really? 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 She slowly gyrates her hips. These cow-sized fun bags on my chest, my big, fat ass. My wide hips, I'm a goddess built for a rough metafolk mating press from one Izuku Midoriya. And you know it. At some point down the line, you won't be able to resist going down on me until I'm a sweating mess again. Izuku grabs her ass. Well, you're right. The more I look at you, the more I want to keep you specifically all for myself. But, again, you're a human. So it can't happen, unfortunately. Momo smiled. You won't forget me, and knowing you'll break other versions of me. I think that'll do, for now. She elegantly crawled off of him and got on her knees, pressing her basketball-sized breasts onto his phallus. She wrapped the organ with her chest and began massaging it. Despite Izuku's size, it was completely concealed by her plus-sized mammaries. The next few minutes consisted of the best titfuck he ever had in his life. Izuku doesn't hold back in splurting all over Momo's chest and face. Human flesh probably isn't as pleasurable as a metafolk's. Momo sat on his lap, putting her husband's powerful rod between her heavy-set ass cheeks, making an attempt to wring out his semen the same way she did earlier, but with her luscious bottom instead of her top. But I'll surpass every metafolk woman you've ever met. And she was doing a surprisingly good job so far. But just before he comes on her, Izuku puts her in a non-lethal chokehold and stabs his throbbing cock into her rosy pink asshole, his ball clenching and pulsing as becomes in her. I'm warm. She lovingly grinds her backside against his waist. I'm fertile, and my fucking body is. God. She felt her belly slowly inflating with his semen. My body is the best I can make it. My lips are always ready for sucking your dick or even something as simple as making out for hours and hours. And no matter the time or place, I'm always ready to bend over and let you break me. When Izuku finally finishes after an entire minute of coming, Momo leaned back against him, sadness clouding her lustful mind. I've done everything, so why can't we stay together? Izuku doesn't take her seriously. Even though she was aware of his powers and what he truly was, she wouldn't remember any of this in the end when he does a reset. It didn't matter. As fun as it was to use her, in the end, she was just one drop of water in the infinite ocean that was the lower and higher plane. He was immortal in the sense that he doesn't truly age. A million years into the future, she most likely wouldn't be remembered. Izuku made this clear to her and doesn't hold back in his wording at all. She wouldn't remember, and she wasn't memorable. From this, Momo came to one conclusion. Her body wasn't the problem, it was what she was. She was a weak little human with a pathetic lifespan and quirk. She was just another needle. I get it. Momo said. Just, before you reset, can we, I don't know, spend some time together? It doesn't have to be anything extravagant, even just. Izuku surprised her by the collision of their lips. Momo kissed him back, slowly riding him as the hours passed. From day to night and day again, they kept kissing and fucking. Mina and Jiro join in occasionally, going until they pass out. Momo fucks Izuku until she passed out, and the instant she woke up, she went again over and over thanks to Izuku healing her. Mina and Jiro do the same, but to a much lesser extent. All of her holes were filled to the brim, and after multiple weeks, they finally cease. Izuku was outside, wearing a t-shirt and a pair of shorts. Momo was wearing a simple white sundress and hat. Izuku stares at the orange-ish reset button before him. Before pressing it, Momo kissed him on the cheek. Have fun, she grinned. I love you, Izuku didn't say it back since it'd be a lie. He resets the timeline, going all the way back to the beginning, like it never happened. Asterisk the one and only change Izuku would be making was a voting suspension in UA. To the best of his ability, he walks and talks the same throughout his life after receiving his power. And mostly, nothing changes. Izuku noticed that once he got into UA, Aizawa was less tired than usual, but he brushed it off as nothing. Instead of repeatedly knocking out Bakugo during the battle trials, he just wins as fast as he could, successfully not getting suspended. Because of this, his performance and behavior wasn't criticized either. Before he knew it, he was on the bus to the USJ. He was sitting next to Asui, his next target, as a love interest in this timeline. And since he couldn't bank on a mental collapse here, he was slightly nicer to her this time around, which didn't go unnoticed by his classmates. On the way there were various attempts made by his classmates to know what his abilities actually were, but none were successful. They arrive at the facility, and Izuku listens to the speech, and then what he was waiting for happened. The purple portal appears, and villains come pouring in, while his classmates were scared and the teachers were on edge. He just yawns. He wondered how his presence would change things. He senses that something isn't right. Asui, everyone shouts. The winged Nomu held Asui by her head, the frog girl frozen in terror. Muffet appears before the class, looking at Izuku. Record breaker. She said, it's a pleasure to meet you. I am Muffet. Izuku turns around, confused. I'm referring to you. Muffet said sternly. Izuku turns back. I don't believe, record breaker, is on my birth certificate, Spider. Izuku sniped. My name is, anyway. Aizawa growled at Izuku's lack of care or manners. I suppose you came here targeting me. You have my undivided attention, Spider. What happens now? If you move, Muffet points one of her arms at Asui. My winged friend tears her head from her body instantly. I kinda figured. Muffet steps forward. As she demanded, Izuku didn't move. To his confusion, she grabbed and bit his arm. Excuse me? He genuinely didn't expect this. Muffet backs away. Why did you bite me? She waits. And waits. But after seeing that nothing was happening, she appeared surprised. My poison doesn't affect you? Poison? Izuku looked down at his arm. Purple cracks and veins were crawling up it. I thought you were just a weirdo. A cute weirdo, but a weirdo nonetheless. His body starts steaming. And in mere moments, the poison was gone as if it were never there. Muffet stares at him, a bit afraid. Awkward, huh? Out of curiosity, what would that poison have done had it worked? Initially, you would have been paralyzed. After a few more seconds, you would die from heart failure. Heart failure? He nods. Nice, nice. So even if it worked, it wouldn't have worked. That's pretty funny. What do you mean? Izuku takes off the top half of his hero costume, tossing it away. Then, he placed his hand over where his heart was. You never stood a chance. Not even once. He tore his heart from his body and tossed it away as well. His classmates gagged, even Aizawa, as composed as he was, kept calm but displayed disgust. 13 dry heaved in her helmet. Muffet takes a step back, genuine terror on her face. It's a little uncomfortable, but I don't need a heart to live. Perks of being awesome. Anyway, this should even the playing field a bit, yeah? There was no response from Muffet or the villains in the USJ's center. What? Have you nothing to say? That's just fine. In a blur, Izuku pulled out a gun, a revolver, and shot the winged Nomu's arm off, freeing Asui. He then shot both of Muffet's legs off before a bullet went through her head, killing her. The winged Nomu regenerated and, with a roar, dashed at Izuku and grabbed him, flying into the air. Wing slammed him into the ground in front of Shigaraki. Grinning, he shot Wing's limbs to grotesque red chunks. He leapt away, laughing. Shigaraki held back the urge to both freak and crash out. Instead, he commanded the muscular beast behind him. Nomu. Assist Wing and kill that green-haired brat. Nomu rushed him, landing a heavy hit on Izuku's face as he caved Wing's chest in with his fist. Wing. Nomu. Formation A. Shigaraki commands. Wing went on the air as the bigger Nomu rushed Izuku relentlessly. They took turns attacking Izuku, but he easily defends himself. Asterisk. Eraserhead. 13 turned to her companion. No, I don't know what's happening either. The tired hero said. Out of curiosity, he went to verify something. He touched the disembodied heart on the ground. Yeah, it's real. Seriously. Mineta shouted. What the hell just happened? And why does Midoriya have a gun? Everyone looked to Bakugo, who shrunk under their awaiting eyes. Don't look at me. He nervously averts his eyes. He's never done this before. I'm lost just like you all. Midoriya is fighting without a heart in his body. Ribbit. Asui watched Izuku toy with the creatures, blowing off their limbs and allowing them to regenerate. Astute observation, Asui. Kaminari said, looking at Izuku's heart on the ground before turning away, gagging violently. Your point? It's kinda cool. Cool? Mineta scoffed. It's gross. It's totally unequivocally gross and absolutely should never be seen by anyone ever again. His words brought up bad memories on Asui's part, but they also made her realize something. I'll ask him later, Ribbit. Asterisk. Hey, Tamura, Izuku said. Huh? Shigaraki was startled by the use of his name. How do you catch? He kicked Wing into Shigaraki, the artificial creature flying at him like a bullet. Kurogiri redirects it back at Izuku via portal. Hey, why didn't you catch? Izuku blocked a flurry of hits from Nomu with one hand. Fine. You want to be a jerk? Be a jerk for all I care. He tore off Nomu's head and threw it into the air, shooting it to bits with his gun. It was dead. Wing picked him up, but Izuku broke its legs and maneuvered his way onto his back, shooting it in the back of the head. Once they landed, Izuku stomped its head into paste. Izuku's LV was at 3. I'd say that was fun, but that would be a lie. And thus began the culling. First, Izuku took out Kurogiri by shooting him through his metal brace, not killing him but instead just knocking him out. With their escape gone, Izuku handled the rest of them, killing most of them but leaving others alive, the living ones running away without hesitation, only to be stopped by Aizawa, 13, and a few students. All in all, Shigaraki was the only one left. Even though he couldn't win, he charged Izuku and tried grabbing him, but Izuku caught his wrists. Look at you. I bet you weren't expecting your life to turn out this way, huh? Izuku shattered Shigaraki's left wrist and let go of him, allowing him to stew in pain before Izuku shot the broken hand off, doing the same to the other. His quirk factor was destroyed. Are you sure you're a villain? Izuku tilts up Shigaraki's head with the barrel of his gun. Because I thought villains were meant to be scary, but you're just sad. You marched in here with that stupid, crusty-ass grin on your face only to be dismantled by one person. Izuku pistol whipped him to the ground. You crossed me for what? Because your daddy hit you. This was a guess, but it seemed to be the right one, based on his growing anger. Shigaraki incoherently shouted as he tried getting up. Izuku pinned him down with one foot. Tamura Shigaraki. You're sad. He tossed off one of the hands he wore on his body, destroying it. You're ugly. Another. You're weak. Another. You're nothing. Another one. You're a loser. Another. You shouldn't be alive. Another. You should roll over and die. Another. You, Midoriya. Asui stops him. Even though he was a villain, she didn't like watching him powerlessly squirm on the ground. He was even ugly crying, which hurt her heart a little. He's had enough. Fine. Izuku stepped away from Shigaraki. The downed villain kept shouting about how he was gonna kill him, not moving or impressing Izuku one bit. If I ever catch you outside prison, I'll shoot off your legs, too. He tried attacking Asui, but Izuku moved her and trips him. I don't even like looking at you. Finally, Aizawa appeared and knocked him out. The police and some of UA's faculty arrive and clean everything up, arresting the remaining villains across each zone. Midoriya. Asui. 1. Call me Sue. 2. Can you let go of me? Izuku's hand was on her hip. Izuku, not making it into a big deal, simply releases her. My bad. It's fine. Thank you for saving me from that winged monster, Ribbit. It was nothing. Izuku says. Those guys were all bark. I'd like to speak with you about something after school, Sue states. Sure. No one was injured. On the bus ride home, Asui sits next to Izuku again. She and Izuku's other classmates brought up something important. Hey. Midoriya. Shiro says, causing Midoriya to look in his direction. What? Kaminari then speaks. So, is your heart, you know? Oh. Izuku lifts his sweater, just now remembering the hole he put in it prior to his fight. I completely forgot about that. How do you forget that you're missing your heart? Mineta shouts. Fighting without your heart pumping is so manly, Kirishima proclaimed. I mean, it's gross as hell, but it's still a bit cool. So, are you okay? Momo inquired with concern in her voice. And are you gonna keep existing without it? Izuku stares at her before looking at Asui. I guess I should bring it back, huh? Please do, Ribbit. She blinks. Wait, what? Out of thin air appeared a small green card made of construction paper. Izuku bit into it and tore it in half, healing himself. There we go. The paper crumbles away. Izuku lifts his sweater again and shows that the hole in his chest is gone. Everyone stared at it and him in awe. How? As usual, Izuku didn't answer any questions. The rest of the day was nothing special, but at the end of the day, Asui caught him outside. Midoriya. Izuku turns to her. She stood next to him, looking as good as always in her uniform. Yeah? You want to come over to my house? She asked bluntly. Izuku pretends to think about it. I have nothing better to do, so sure. And to her house they went. Asui's family were a nice bunch. Izuku had plans for the mother, Beru Asui. A fine MILF of a woman with a large ass was what she was. But that would be for another route. Turns out, Asui's parents were waiting for their daughter to come home so they could go out on a date while Asui took care of her siblings. The hours passed like minutes. Izuku successfully made the best impression he could on the Asui family. Samadare and Satsuki looked up to him and admired his immense strength. He lifted their couch with ease even while all of them were on it. Soon enough, they were put to sleep in their rooms. You better not fumble your boyfriend, Suyu. He's cool, Samadare joked. He's not my boyfriend, Ribbit. Asui responds, a bit quieter than usual. Keep telling yourself that. Tsunere Samadare struggled against Asui's tickle attack. He's still not my boyfriend, Asui said more firmly, releasing her giggling little brother. Now more tired than before, he drifts to sleep. Izuku and Asui sat next to each other in her room. Midoriya. Yes? Were people scared of you before UA? I guess. Though it was mostly my fault. I always showed off my strength whenever I could. At some points, my old teachers and classmates tried sucking up to me like they did Bakugo back when he was the star. You can live without your heart. Asui says. You can do what others can't. Some of our classmates were pretty freaked out when you tore out your heart like that. I can live without their approval. Asui stares at him. When I was younger, people were put off by my way of my speaking and especially my appearance. I was never called ugly, but... She pauses. Anyway, what I'm saying is that I wished I had taken it like you did. Some days, certain insults I heard echo in my head. Times change. Huh. What's weird then could become cool in the future. You, for instance, got into UA while they didn't. As for me, I'm the strongest. Asui cuts him off with a peck directly on the lips. Stop talking. Izuku doesn't speak. After a bit of waiting, Asui moves closer. Good. She kisses him again, this time for much longer. Izuku crept his hand up her toned thigh before stopping at her hip and taking her hand. Admittedly, holding it felt nice. Asui, after just a minute of intimate tongue kissing, was already on the verge of melting. Izuku was way better at this than he should be. She felt her panties moisten as he easily wrecked her mind. Letting her urges get the best of her, Asui climbs onto Izuku's lap and deepens their kissing by pulling in the back of his head. Izuku rests his hands on her hips. They continued on for 10 whole minutes before Asui pushed him on his back on her bed and planted herself firmly on her crotch, wiggling her hips salaciously. My siblings are asleep, and my parents won't be back for a couple of hours. How fast can you get home? From here, it'd take just a few minutes. Good. Izuku didn't jump right into sex with her just yet, and neither did Asui. But there was a lot of touching and groping on both sides. Asui felt up his muscles. Izuku groped her large breasts through her frog-themed pajama shirt. Unfortunately, they do have to stop once they get tired. Or, to be specific, once Asui gets tired. It was late at night, and they didn't want to end up being late or tired for UA tomorrow, so they called it here. So, same time tomorrow? Same time tomorrow, Asui says. Asterisk the time of the sports festival comes. Even though the world was rocked by the death of All Might, Izuku forgot about his fight. He'd rectify that next time. The show had to go on. Classes were somewhat normal and as easy as ever. Izuku had lunch with Asui, and when school was over, everyone tried leaving. But a massive group of students were blocking their exit. Izuku was a little annoyed but kept a calm smile on his face. Could you all kindly move? I have places to see, people to go. That's not how the saying goes, Midoriya, Tenya says, performing his famous robot chop maneuver. But you're correct. Whatever you're here for, it can't be more important than going home. They're likely here to scope out the competition. We survived a villain attack, and Midoriya is here. Bakugo comments. Whatever. Izuku takes a step forward. Since you extras aren't moving, I'm gonna walk through you and leave now. As expected, they started moving when he began walking. Someone called him out. Oh, is the greatest showboater in UA's history, Izuku Midoriya, actually running away? An annoying voice owned by a certain blonde taunted. Yeah. Izuku shouted back. I'm not gonna waste my time bickering with people from third-rate classes consisting of fourth-rate losers. This got under the skin of the group of students. If you're mentally challenged and want to pick a fight with me in particular, make sure you're actually worth my time, okay? I only deal with winners. As he walked away, Bakugo facepalmed. Oh, that idiot. He just called everyone brain damaged. Asui's expression doesn't change, but inside, she was a little miffed. This'll bode well. Asterisk Inko was busy at work, so Asui joined Izuku in his house today. Standing in the middle of his room, Izuku was pressing his boxer-clad cock firmly against Asui's panty-clad butt while also groping her perfect breasts. Hey MNGH, Izuku. What's up? Don't you think you should try being a little nicer to people? Not really. Izuku answered. I'd never let any of them die or get critically injured, obviously, but befriending them is a different story for me. I didn't say you had to be friends, just more friendly. Then Asui realizes something. Ribbit. Why were you nicer to me specifically then? Izuku stops groping and dry humping her, which makes Asui a little upset. I was? Yes. You were. Huh. Suppose I was drawn to your incredible body at first. As time went on, I quite liked hearing you talk. The first part was understandable, somewhat, but the second bit, you were attracted to my voice? Well, how do I word this? Izuku pretends to think about it. I liked how blunt you were. It was the way you spoke that drew me in. I love your blunt, no bullshit honesty. Thank you, Izuku. Suyu wiggles her large booty against him. Can we get back to it now? Izuku hugs her tight. He pats her belly, resting his pinkies underneath the hems of her panties. Sure. Standing up was a pain, so they rested on the bed. Suyu was on her stomach, allowing Izuku to press his weight down on her and enjoy hot dogging her backside. Hey, Izuku. I bet you think the sports festival will be easy. It will be. Then how about a challenge? Sure. The last round of the sports festival always consists of one-on-one battles. If you go through that without getting hit once. Asui flips around, trapping Izuku with her powerful legs. Her sopping wet pussy leaving a print on his boxers. I'll let you come inside of me as much as you want. Izuku blinks. Are you sure about this? Are you? Asui sniped. Well, he tried warning her, not that he was gonna refuse this anyway. Sure. And if I lose? Learning a little humility never hurt anyone, ribbit. Izuku deadpans at that. Right. They went to sexually cuddling for multiple hours. Asui had a few small orgasms here and there, but Izuku unfortunately had none. The day came, and Izuku was selected to give the opening speech. Bakugo swallowed nervously as his childhood bully stood before the mic. Please don't say anything stupid. Honestly, Izuku stretches. I don't have much to say to any of you. I mean, me winning this thing is gonna be piss easy. It's gonna be a wash. Midnight and Present Mike frowned. Aizawa slammed his head into a wall. And the funny part is, everyone watching this knows that as well. In a fair fight, I'll always win. No ifs, ands, or buts. But. Midnight spoke. But since I'd rather not bore everyone by winning everything in 3 seconds, a challenge will be imposed on your gloriousness by yours truly. If, at any point in this event, during any of the events, I am touched by any of you peons, I'll drop out of UA entirely and never attend any hero school ever again. The aroused murmurs out of the crowd and of the competing students. What the hell did he just say? Is he crazy? What an ego. Asui's eyes widened. She did not tell him to do this. In fact, I'm so sure it's not gonna happen. I'll even say this. Not only will I drop out of UA if I lose, for an entire calendar year, 365 whole days, I'll be the personal servant of whoever ends up making contact with me. That sweetened the deal quite a bit. Some of the students, especially those from general education in Class 1B, had malicious looks on their faces. They had plans for him. That'll be all. Try to make me break a sweat. He leaves the podium with his eyes closed in a confident stride. When he returned to his class, Tenya tried to grab his shit and talk, only for Izuku to dodge. Oh, whoops. Didn't mean to turn the reflexes on already. What's up, Iida? The bespectacled youth shook nervously. Are you crazy, Midoriya? You just made enemies of hundreds of students. If I actually lose my own challenge, I was never worthy of being here. Trust the process, glasses. I'll be alright. An obstacle race was the first event. As soon as it started, to the surprise of the audience, everyone began gunning for Izuku. He laughs at this, jumping onto a purple-haired kid's head on the shoulder and leaping past them all like a rocket. Later, suckers, he laughed and dashed away as everyone followed after him, only for most of them to be frozen by Todoroki. The race was a cinch, and at a few points, for the sake of fun, Izuku stops at a few points just to show that he could very easily win and avoid them at the same time. He gets first place. The next event was the cavalry battle, which wasn't an issue. Asui, an attractive support student named Mei Hatsume, who he also kept in mind for later routes, and surprisingly, Bakugo joined him as well. Upon being asked why by Izuku, he doesn't really get a straight answer. He just says he wanted to help him out of the hole he dug himself. In any case, Izuku wasn't touched at any point, nor were his points taken. He remained at 10 million the entire time. And then came the event everyone was waiting for. The one-on-one battles. Everyone wanted to see Izuku the record breaker in action. He was first put up against Obara Shiozaki of 1B, another person he kept in mind. You're quite full of yourself, she said sharply. Yeah? Izuku smirks. I gotta make living in a world full of cardboard and ants interesting somehow. Obara widened her eyes. Card. She sighs. Pride is sin. Izuku Midoriya. Having and expressing it isn't, but to this degree, it's grotesque. Sin? What's a sin is that awesome body, He wasn't expecting so many UA girls to have excellent figures. Momo, Mina, and Jiro were great, and Asui is as well. Her strong legs, thick thighs, sizable breasts, and exquisitely large backside thrilled Izuku. And Abara was no different. Sure, Izuku shrugged. What I'm more keen on knowing is whether or not you'll keep talking my ear off about it, or if you'll cut the shit and do something. Abara sighed. When I win your challenge, I'll use the 365 days to bring you back to the light. Vines appeared behind him, but they were destroyed the instant they rose and attempted to grab him. Yawn. He shouted, twirling his dagger before putting it back in the space it came from. Use a year to. I don't know. Nothing came to mind. Never mind. Izuku dashes forward, kicking Abara and sending her out the arena, winning the match, a fast victory that people mostly reacted negative to. Cardboard and ants. The watching heroes and civilians murmured amongst each other. Sheesh, that kid's annoying. Yeah, but I'm sure as hell not gonna check him on that, and you aren't either. There's no way he's that powerful, right? He is. And if he backs up all that shit talk by winning without getting touched, it'll only make his huge head bigger. A good ass kicking should set him straight. From the looks of it, the only one who can beat him was All Might, and he's dead. Damn it, what a pain. The rest of the first round Izuku paid no mind to. When it was over, everyone was given a 20-minute intermission to rest and relax a bit. Of course, Izuku and Asui used this time to disappear to somewhere no one would find them and talk. No one's gotten me so far, Suyu. Izuku said. They were leaning up against the same tree, far away from any prying eyes or ears. The way I see it, I think I'll be winning our bet. With low difficulty, mind you. Yeah, you don't seem very worried, Izuku said. I'm not. The sports festival isn't over yet, Ribbit. Izuku smells something peculiar and smiles. Is there something you aren't telling me? Huh. No, why? Why would you think that? I have a pretty good nose, you know. I can smell something interesting on you. Izuku moves in front of her and slowly gets closer. Asui backs up against the tree, her heart hammering on her chest. You're aroused, Sue. Asui doesn't say anything. She stands there, frozen with ragged breath. Her legs quiver with excitement. Izuku presses her. He gently and lovingly, lifting her chin with one hand. You want me to win, don't you? The thought of my succession excites you to know? Asui lunged on him, kissing him deeply and in a primal, animalistic manner. She was hungry, wanting. Izuku fell on his back and returned Asui's passion tenfold, once again dominating her in yet another heated makeout sesh. She eventually breaks away from his lips, still remaining on his lap and quite close to his face. I can't stop thinking about you, Midoriya. She kissed his jaw. Your smell, your taste, why you're. She groans just thinking about it. Every time you pressed your cock against me, I felt it throbbing, raging. It felt so big and hot. I wanted it, I wanted you inside me. The primal urge to breed with the superior life form, Izuku, surged within Asui like a thunderstorm. Asui cracks. She was almost hyperventilating. I love you, I love. Hey, hey. Izuku interrupts, putting a hand over her mouth. He stands up along with her. You wanted to experience me this whole time, huh? Yes. Why didn't you just say so? I don't really like the idea of getting pregnant, especially right now, but every time I think about you fucking me, I get immensely hot and wet between my legs. We'll talk later, okay? Izuku says. We have to focus on the sports festival. I believe your fight is coming up soon. You're right. Asui kisses him one more time. Regardless of if you win or lose the challenge, you're gonna fucking me unconscious after. Of course. They went separate ways so as to not arouse suspicion. Before leaving, Izuku could hear the small and deathly quiet breaths of someone who was watching them almost the entire time but pays her no mind. Asterisk, the matches flew by. Asui fought and unfortunately lost against Bakugo, but she did pretty well. Izuku was up against Nato Monoma was 1B, who used Bakugo's quirk. What the hell? He easily dodged him but was utterly confused. Nato smirked smugly. Are you frightened, Midoriya? Are you terrified of a peon ripping you off of your high horse and showing you what for? Peeved. Izuku scoffed at the notion. As if anyone from your lesser class could best me. I was just a little surprised that you used Bakugo's quirk. Not that it'll help you here. Nato flew it, but Izuku hit the ground and kicked him in the face with both of his feet before twisting his body and kicking him across the face again. Just from these two hits, Nato was incredibly disoriented and hurt. Growling, he creates a smokescreen with explosion. Before he could try attacking again, the smoke began moving away somewhere. Just seconds later, it was all gone. Izuku breathed all of it into his lungs, and then he breathes out, blasting Nato with a huge gust of air and smoke, blowing him out of the arena and winning the match. Ah, winning. Almost as natural as breathing, Izuku laughs as he leaves the arena. The final match comes. Izuku vs Bakugo, his dear old friend. When the match began, Bakugo tried talking with him, only for Izuku to kick him out of the ring in less than a second. He didn't feel like annoying or beating him senseless anymore, as he was more interested in fucking his new girlfriend and future wife in this timeline, Suyu. He was crowned with his gold medal. As he said he would, he won the entire tournament without being touched once, which he proclaimed with pride. He even says to the world that he would be bigger and better than All Might ever was, which really got under a certain hero killer's skin. Afterward, they returned to class. Aizawa told them that they had the next 2 days to rest and recuperate. Upon hearing that, Izuku glances at Asui. Asui glances back. They knew what they were gonna do with those 2 days. Unbeknownst to them, but not Izuku, a certain girl saw this and grit her teeth. At the end of the day, as Izuku and Asui were leaving, someone stopped Izuku. Glasses? What the hell do you want? Midoriya. His voice and body language gave off that something wasn't right. Can you come with me, please? No. Izuku walked away. Iida stepped in front of him, but it's important. I don't give a damn what it is, I'm not, Midoriya. Asui said. I think you should go with him for now. If it were nothing, he wouldn't be as stressed as he is. Izuku groaned but relented. This better be really damn good, glasses, or so help me. As it turns out, it was good. Tensai Iida, Tenya's older brother, was critically injured. He was paralyzed due to damage to his spine. Geez. Who messed this guy up so badly? Midoriya. Huh? That green card you used. Do you have any more of those? Tenya asked in a distressed manner. Izuku pulled out a whole deck's worth. I have like 307 of these. They restored your heart completely. This surprised Tensai, his mother, and the doctor. See, can they restore my brother? With words, Izuku tore off the apparatus on Tensai's face. Hey. Tensai's mother rushed Izuku. What are you doing to my son? Bite this hard. Izuku shoved the card in Tensai's mouth. Now. Seeing as he really didn't have a choice, Tensai bites the strange card. Izuku tears it, and it does it magic. Tensai had an onset coughing fit as he sat up. What the? Tensai removed all of the other things attached to him and he stands up. How? Tensai's mother was brought to tears, as was Tenya. Both turned to Izuku, about to thank him profusely, but Izuku turned around and began to leave. You don't need to thank me or give me anything, just don't bother me again. He leaves behind the confused but happy family, asterisk. Asui was home alone. Her family was gone, and according to a text from her mother, they wouldn't be back for a while. She sat on her bed, waiting impatiently for Izuku to come. When she heard a knock at the door, she sprung up and opened it before the person behind it could knock again. Sorry, the Iida thing took a while, Izuku says. Right. Asui dragged him in, putting his hand on her chest. Talk and grope, ribbit. They sat and talked for a while and touched each other as if it were as casual as breathing. They discussed potential dates, what they liked, etc. You know, Izuku spoke as Asui straddled him. He shifts from massaging her breasts to her hefty ass meat. Your hero costume is tight as hell on you. Should I have worn it? No, the teachers would grill you about it if you tried bringing it with you. Besides, cosplay is a mid-fetish anyway. Izuku pecks her on the cheek. And if you were gonna end up naked and beneath me anyway, I don't really see the point. Asui's tongue dug into Izuku's shorts, reaching his cock in a few moments. With the same unchanging expression she always had, she made a simple request with the bluntness she was known for. Let's just fuck already. Before Asui knew it, Izuku was balls deep inside her in the evergreen missionary position. Asui affectionately held his face, poking at his lips with her tongue. Izuku allows her in, engaging in another of the ripe, deep tongue kissing that they both loved so much. Izuku slowly moved in, increasing his pace at a relatively slow pace. As soon as their lips touched, Asui locked her arms around him as she experienced an explosive orgasm. This euphoria was unlike anything she had ever felt before. While she was on this high, Izuku was pushed to the point of coming deep inside of her. The frog girl convulsed as this went on, mind broken by the onslaught brought upon her by Izuku. KKH. Asui was trying to speak but was unsuccessful. Izuku stopped coming after about 20 seconds, kissing her briefly. Are you okay, Sue? Keep going. Asui croaked. Please keep going, ribbit. Izuku smiled. If you say so. He brought her ankles next to her head, proceeding to go down on her in a mating press. His favorite maneuver. While his priority was mostly on pleasuring Asui, Izuku's mind was also on a certain invisible girl who was watching them from the corner of her room. Her heard small droplets of something hit the ground beneath her. He could smell her arousal. Minutes later, Izuku pumped Asui's womb full again. With that, she passed out. Izuku sits up and pretends to leave for the bathroom. Just as Hagakure rummaged around for something underneath the couch, Izuku grabbed her and forced her against a wall. Hi, Hagakure. Izuku said in a scarily friendly tone. You're really kind of a freak, huh? Midoriya. Hagakure panicked, slamming a fist against him. Let go of me. Hagakure. Izuku grabbed her shaking fist. You do realize the situation you're in, right? Huh? Situation? You're here without my or Asui's consent. As far as we're concerned, you broke in here, and for what? Hagakure growled. You did something to Sue. Why, you hypnotized her, didn't you? I heard you too during the sports festival. What? Izuku was genuinely confused. Hypnosis wasn't among his abilities. At least he didn't think they were. Is it that unbelievable that a girl likes me? Izuku chuckles. Whatever, you can say what you want about me, but you're the one who broke into this house and watched us. If this got out, you'd be in hot water for abusing your powers in such a villainous way. What? Toru's eyes, for a long few seconds, went down to Izuku's exposed phallus. It was still hard and throbbing despite his ruts with Asui. She gulps but returns her gaze upward to Izuku. What are you saying? I'm saying that if you keep your mouth shut, I won't say anything about this, Izuku says. I mean, what would you gain from telling people me and Asui are a thing? Again, you'd be the one in hot water, not me. Toru growled. Fine. You win, okay. I won't say anything to anyone, I'll leave. Izuku, to her surprises, kisses her directly on the lips. Directly on the lips. Somehow, he knew where they were. Could he see her this entire time? No, that wasn't it. He just made a really good guess. He went full force on her right from the jump. Toru could taste both him and Asui on him. She was ashamed that she liked it. She swatted at Izuku's chest, but it was like hitting a steel wall. Just seconds later, she could feel her legs give out, and her nether regions moisten. Furiously, she felt Izuku's raging erection teasingly poke at her entrance. Every time the tip of his cock pulsed, it sent tiny electric shocks throughout her entire body, pushing her further and further. But right before she was about to climax, Izuku stopped. Goodbye. Izuku walks off toward Asui's room. She heard Asui's froggy moans come a few moments later. With invisible tears rolling down her face, from guilt, sadness, and something else, Toru shakily puts her clothes on and leaves. Asui was on top of Izuku. After quite a while of being fucked senseless, the sexy frog girl took charge while Izuku relaxed. She sucked his cock hungrily, bobbing her head up and down while using her wet, prehensile tongue to stroke it at the same time. By this point, her mind was lost in the cloud of lust Izuku put her in. It was like her one and only purpose was to wring out as much cum from Izuku's balls as possible. Izuku pats her head, the frog croaking lovingly while swaying her big frog booty on the air, trying and successfully riling him up. Moments later, her cheeks puff up with his semen. She swallows every drop, not letting a single trace of it escape her grasp. You're so tasty, Izuku-chan, Asui croaked happily. Izuku smiled. You can have as much as you want, Sue-chan. I won't get tired, trust me. She smiled, continuing to pleasure him with her dexterous mouth. Over their break, Izuku and Asui spent almost every waking moment together. They went on dates, had sex, went on more dates, and had more sex. Asui was deeply in love with him and wanted nothing more than to spend the rest of their lives together. Over this time, Asui learned more about Izuku. Mainly his love for big, thick asses. Of course, she quite frequently teased him with her own large booty, riling him up enough to make him fuck her senseless. Izuku expected something to happen, but nothing does. Toru kept her word and never told anyone of what happened. Nice. They returned to Ua. Izuku and Asui opted to continue keeping their relationship a secret. Izuku glances over at Toru, who isn't acting as her usual bubbly self. He couldn't tell what her face looked like and promised himself to find a way to make her visible in a future route. They had to select their hero names. Everyone had good ones, but Izuku didn't care what he was called. He chose the name Deku, which made Bakugo flinch. Time passes and Class 1A were assigned the task of selecting who they would intern with. Izuku, of course, had the most choices to pour through. Class 1A were given the period to do so. Huh? What's got you shocked, Midoriya? Kaminari asked as he approached. I take it you got a pretty high-ranking hero gunning for you? Izuku shocked him his list and pointed at a name on it. Mirko. Mirko? Kaminari shouted, making Jiro wince and cover her ears. Quiet down, dumbass. Wait, did you just say Mirko? The rabbit hero, Mirko? Siro and a few others approached. He did. Izuku said. Why is that surprising? She's never taken interns before. Ever. Kaminari states. I wonder why she picked you. It's because of the stunt he pulled during the sports festival. Momo drawled boredly. You know, all the showboating and whatnot. Jiro snickers. Explain it slower so he actually gets it, yao Momo. Shut up. I guess I'll pick her then. Izuku said casually. It's not like I need any training from the pros anyways. Trying to improve upon perfection is impossible, but this should make for a good way to kill time. Perfection, huh? Jiro huffed and rolled her eyes. Mirko is gonna kick your ass. Izuku laughs. Right, and I'm the Prime Minister. Later on, they were sent off to their internships. Mirko's was in a surprisingly nice but small house meant for 2 people. Hey, Mirko. Izuku called out. Nothing and no one responds. Are you here? Nothing. As he turned around, something leapt out and attacked him, but Izuku blocked. Huh? He looked down at his arm as the attacker leapt away, grinning. Oh, did that hurt? Mirko asked cockily. Hurt? Izuku raised a brow. I felt it, but it definitely didn't hurt. Izuku attacks, punching her across the face and nearly sending her out of the house. Damn. Mirko spat out some blood and stood up, her kitchen table destroyed. You hit hard as hell. I know. I'm pretty great, huh? Izuku grinned. Mirko stands, smiling with her eyes shut. You also reek of sex. Izuku was a little surprised. Perhaps it was due to her quirk that she could smell something like that. Do I? You do. Well, my girlfriend and I love each other very much. I suppose being able to control whether or not I get her pregnant made her that much more eager. Izuku was only semi-flirting here. He quite liked Mirko's muscular physique and super thick thighs. She was like an upgraded version of Asui. I didn't need to know that. Mirko twitches. Anyway, you talked yourself up quite a lot during the sports festival, so I wanted to see if you lived up to the hype. Did I? Who am I kidding? Of course I did. You didn't, Mirko jabbed. We've only had one fight thus far, brat. That's what Izuku's internship mainly consisted of. Sparring, patrolling, sparring, and more patrolling. His internship would end tomorrow, and honestly, the whole thing was boring, Izuku said in an exasperated tone, knocking Mirko down for probably the 100th time. This is boring, Mirko. Holy shit. Excuse me? The rabbit hero stood, stamping her foot. What the hell are you talking about? I learned a whole lot of nothing while I was here. I fought you and barely broke a sweat. I patrolled with you and stopped fucking purse snatchers. I learned nothing here, and honestly, I very much regret wasting my time. He wasn't actually angry, more so mildly annoyed. He had forever, but spending time doing things he didn't like was quite unpleasant. Seeing as you have nothing to teach me, I think I'll be leaving now. Izuku stepped outside. Bye. And then he closed the door. Mirko wanted to chase after him, but something in her mind stopped her. All of her losses to Izuku flashed in her mind. Never in her entire hero career had she been so easily bested by someone. The kind of power he held was unreal. It was almost divine. What was this feeling in her chest? After Izuku left, he realized he had just 2 days of his internship left, and he couldn't think of anything to do over those 2 days. Could he visit Tsuyu? No, not only did he not know where she was, but she was also probably busy. Visit Hagakure? No. I'm so damn bored. Isn't there anything to do around here? Or anyone? His thoughts went back to his first route. To Momo specifically. He kinda missed her. Can't think about her. That Momo is gone forever now. Unless I reset right now and... This is stupid. In the end, he spent the remaining days not doing much. Sometime later, he learns that the one who injured Tensai was none other than the hero killer Stain, who was still at large. All in all, he was happy to go back to Ua. There, Aizawa announces the end of term test, which Izuku wasn't worried about. Time passes. Asui, unfortunately, went off to study with Momo and a few others, so she could increase her grades, which were fine before. Everyone passed the written test. Surprisingly, Izuku and Momo got the same scores, which the haughty rich girl didn't acknowledge. And then came the exercise test. Plot twist. It'd be a pair of 2 students against a handicapped teacher, which disappointed Izuku. Speaking of Izuku, he wouldn't have to do any of this. Though he didn't want to fuel Izuku's ego, the facts were that he was simply too powerful. All Might was dead, and none of the other teachers could match his strength or speed. Teaching him combat would be pointless, so his test would be different. Midoriya, you're gonna be watching everyone else's battles and giving them honest criticism on their strategies and quirk usage, was what Aizawa said. He didn't want to do this, but the point of this route was to stay at UA, so he relented and watched the battles, which were incredibly boring. Man, this place sucks. Izuku kicked his feet up on the desk as his eyes grew heavy from looking at the monitor. Ua sucks. I know, right? Aizawa says. He slammed his face on the desk. Again, and again. He continued this until the tests were over, at which point he gave the class their criticisms, which were surprisingly insightful. After this, they were given all of the necessary information pertaining to the place they'd be training at. A forest lodge. After class was over, everyone went separate ways to different shopping stores to buy the things they needed. Izuku had a feeling that someone would have suggested they all go shopping together, but that didn't happen here. Maybe on some other route. Of course, Izuku and Asui go shopping together. On a few occasions, they snuck off for a quickie or 3. A blow job here, some anal there, etc. Izuku liked Asui's tongue and how she used it, but he enjoyed flattening her dump truck booty every time he thrust it in her. All of their sessions ended with a tender kiss. And a blowjob for the road. They had plenty of fun. The day of their class trip came, which led to a collision with the hero group known as the Wild Wild Pussycats. A group of cute girls Izuku would keep in mind for later routes. The blue one, Pixie Bob, was very interesting around Izuku, which seemed to annoy the kid with them. Izuku wasn't fazed by her interesting words, which upset her. Alas, she moves on. She uses her quirk, which drops them into what they called the Beast's Forest. Izuku traversed it with ease, and Asui was doing fine. Hagakure was struggling, but she'd make it if she kept going. The class eventually makes it, and Izuku spots the same weird, angsty kid just hanging around, being angry at everything. Upon noticing his eyes, the kid glared at him. Izuku smiled, rolling his eyes. He was likely a non-factor here. Everyone retrieves their luggage, has dinner, and then takes a bath. Izuku wishes he had X-ray vision, but being able to smell arousal with his super senses was a close second. Then again, just about every metafolk could do that. The day goes on, and Izuku mostly zones out. He doesn't really participate and mainly uses this time to lounge around, which annoys Aizawa and the Pussycats. That's him, huh? Mandalay asked Aizawa, to which he answered, yeah. He's probably my most troublesome student to date. And he's so strong you can't do anything, and because of that, he has an uncontrollable ego. Mandalay asked. Aizawa nodded. Damn. Well, I don't know if there's anything we can do here. All Might was probably the only hero that could humble him, and if there exists a villain put there that could give your student a good fight, well, that'd be horrible for the rest of his peons. So I've heard. Aizawa says flatly. I brought it up with Nezu, and he's looking into bringing another #1 hero here to Japan from another country. But I doubt that'll help us. Training goes well. Hours turn to days, and days turn to weeks. Izuku mainly does some light exercise, as he didn't need any training. There were ways of improving metas, but that was only possible on the fourth world. The lower plane simply couldn't accommodate and refine his power. It was now night, and everyone was asleep. Except for Izuku. He heard a small footstep on the floor. Someone had entered and was trying to be quiet. Out of curiosity, he doesn't move or shows any signs of reacting. Whoever this was, they slipped a mask on his face, which emits a kinda of sleeping gas. Villains, no doubt. Of course, it doesn't affect him. But he pretends it does as he is picked up by the mysterious person with long arms. Before he knew it, he heard that he was on a different type of floor. They warped somewhere. He was put on a chair and had his arms and legs restrained by heavy metal. Then, a hand made contact with his palm. The palm instantly combusted into familiar white fire. Come on, seriously? Izuku gets up, destroying the restraints accidentally. He kicked away the burning body of AFO, who tried knocking him out and stealing his quirk. Then he killed the creature that brought her him, a weaker version of the wing Nomu that was at the USJ. AFO was a little disappointing to him so far. In the future, he'd leave him alone to get stronger and steal quirks. And then he looked upon his surroundings. He was in a bar. Weird. No one was here, but he knew this guy had other allies aside from Shigaraki and Kurogiri. Finding them would be the hard part. Unfortunately, AFO's body was erased. But Izuku loosely remembered his scent. Cranking up his nose to the max, he tried tracking everyone that had AFO's scent. He got a few trails and smirked. It's been a few days since Izuku went missing. The Pussycats and Aizawa kept training the students, but it was to a lesser degree, as they tried finding Izuku. Since he was strong, most assumed he just left for some reason. The possibility annoyed them, but on the off chance he actually was kidnapped by a villain, they remained diligent. To everyone's surprise, especially Hagakuri's, Asui fell into a deep depression and stopped training entirely. She barely left her room and only ate what was brought to her. They were taken aback by just how badly his disappearance hurt her. Hagakuri was under the impression that Izuku used his quirk to make her fall in love with him, and she assumed that hypnosis was why she almost came just by him kissing her. But there was no way a quirk could bring on that kind of raw sadness. The love she had was very real and wasn't forced at all. This made Hagakuri feel a little weird. She didn't like Izuku, at least, she didn't think she did. She was a little jealous of the effect he had on Asui and angry that deep down, she missed his lips on hers. And the pleasure. She slapped herself. She needed to stop thinking about him, and... What the hell is that? Bakugo shouted. In the distance, something was approaching. Something big enough to be seen over the trees. Everyone got on guard, but a few moments later, it was revealed to be Izuku. He was carrying multiple massive bags filled with something. He also didn't have a shirt on. I have returned. Izuku dropped the bags, their weight shaking the entire forest. He stretches. Forgive me for my little outing. Well, forced outing. But I have returned safe and sound. Mandalay and Aizawa approached the former, asking, forced outing? Well, Izuku explains. He was kidnapped by a villain who called himself All for One, who tried forcibly putting him asleep to steal his quirk. But since poisons and drugs don't work on him, Izuku caught him off guard and killed him. A half-truth. Then, instead of coming back immediately, he tracked everyone with AFO's scent and killed everyone in Japan who was allied with him, from corrupt heroes to police to even some government figures, but he left some alive for info-gathering purposes. The large bag had the living associates of AFO. The much, much larger bag had the dead ones. There were some decently strong ones, but what took the longest was finding a way to group them all up. And of course, there was the issue of returning here from where I was without a warping quirk. But all's well that ends well and all that. He yawns, ignoring the looks of utter shock on the faces of Class 1A and 1B, Kota, and the Pussycats. Well, that's all. If you'll excuse me, I need to take a bath. This is the first time I've broken a sweat, ever. And it was due to me zipping around the entire country villain hunting. You can go through the bodies, right? Right. Don't follow me, by the way. Bye. He zipped away, leaving a dust trail behind him. Aizawa stared at where he was and where he was going in silence. He turns around. That's just about it for me. He can do what he wants. Aizawa didn't care anymore as long as Izuku was on the side of good. I'm gonna go lie down. Monoma was speechless, but this only reaffirmed his desires. He had to somehow find a way to touch Izuku and copy his quirk. He needed to know not only what it is but also what having that kind of power felt like. He needed it. He hungered for it. Later on, as the teachers and several other pros went through Izuku's bounty, the green-haired metafolk soaked in the male baths alone. Then, someone walked in on him. Two people, one of them trying yet again to be stealthy. Tsuyu Asui and Toru Hagakure. Hey, Su. He says as the naked frog girl approached. Sorry that I was gone a while. She kept moving silently. I was. Asui got into the water again and held his face, her eyes having nothing behind them except for one thing. Never mind. Asui kisses him, holding him in place with her strong legs, which were, along with her sizable rear end, sat firmly on his lap. Without waiting, she dropped all of her weight on his cock and rides him. Even though this combo felt good for Izuku, he knew this was more for Asui than him. It was like she was deprived of her favorite food for multiple years. In a sense, Izuku was deprived as well. He missed her slim waist, baby-bearing hips, thick, powerful thighs, large and firm tits and an even larger ass. He loved her body. Izuku kisses her all over, leaving a good dozen love bites on her shoulders and chest. During their fun, Izuku heard Hagakure moaning extremely quietly. She was touching herself to the sexual display. At the end of their fun, Asui dresses herself and leaves, satisfied with her bounty. Izuku stands up. Hagakure. The naked invisible girl steps forward with heavy breaths. Her palms landed on Izuku's chest as she began licking at his chest. Her leg humps his phallus as if she were a dog. Izuku hugged her, running his hands across her invisible figure. Her body was about equal to Mina's but with a slightly larger bust. He could feel some muscle on her as well, especially in her thick thighs and legs. If Momo was an S, and Mina was an A, Jiro would be a B+, and Toru would be an A-. All in all, her figure was excellent. Izuku prods open her lower lips and slowly speared his length into her. It was a little weird, given that she was entirely invisible, but he made it work. Toru bites his shoulder to stifle the volume of her moans. Izuku went faster, groping her delectable chest and ass all the while. They stood there, bathing in each other's bodies for the next few minutes until Izuku comes in her. Again, it was weird fucking something invisible, but she felt good at least. He slapped her ass as Toru wrapped a leg around him, continuing to pleasure him with her lower half. Izuku. Ha, Izuku corrects himself. Toru. I'm sorry, Izuku. Toru says. He could feel her begin to suck on one of his nipples, muttering with her mouth full, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Izuku shushes her. It's okay, Toru. It'll all be okay. He hugs her tight as he pumps her womb full again. The invisible girl twitches with pleasure. She was crying. Not from how good she felt, but from an overwhelming onset of emotions. An emotional breakdown. She was sobbing, but Izuku hugs her. SSHH. Everything will be okay, Toru. Just stop thinking. Wah. Toru sniffles. Stop thinking. He smiled kindly. You're thinking too much, and that's why you cry. No one will ever know of this as long as you do one thing. Whenever we're alone together, stop thinking. You like what's happening, and deep down, you want to be my loyal, unwavering bitch. So, just let it happen. Embrace the pleasures and let your mind break when we're together, as long as you're a hero saving lives and whatnot. Who cares if you engage in a little debauchery with me? But I'm gonna kiss you now, Toru. Izuku lifts her chin, and once I do, you'll surrender to me. And we'll pleasure each other. No one will know, and there will be no consequences for either of us. I'll make you comb your brains out for years and years. His lips meet her own. Toru trembles. Her brain did backflips in her skull for a while before it settled. She kisses back, pushing as much of her skin onto his as possible. She moves her hips on her own, taking in her now lover's lengthy and girthy phallus. "Good girl," Izuku says, moving from her lips to her ear. "You're so good, Toru. You're doing so well. You're all mine now, Toru. We're gonna have so much fun together." And then he moves to her neck. Toru's breath shakes, and then just seconds later, she breaks in. Surrenders completely. "Thank you, honey." Training proceeds as normal for the remainder of Class 1A's and 1B's time at the Forest Lodge. Of course, on more than a dozen occasions, Izuku either snuck away with Asui or Toru for some rough breeding. He came in each of time more than 10 times over the duration of their training. Even though Asui very clearly didn't know about Toru, Izuku could tell that she was just a little suspicious. Not that he cared. The middle of August comes, and life returns to normal. Nezu considered implementing a dorm system due to Izuku being kidnapped. The name he had in mind for it was the Heights Alliance. But he puts it on hold for now. Because of Izuku, nothing really happened to UA and its students. Shigaraki and Kurogiri were rotting in Tartarus. AFO and almost all of his followers and allies were either dead or in Tartarus, and Izuku, even now, was so powerful that crime rates actually started to drop. He expected and prepared for the worst, but the worst never came. If anything, Nezu was more worried by Izuku. He was volatile and had almost no traits of a hero. He had all Might's unmatched strength, but not his heart. He was too strong to be trusted without any countermeasures in place. So, instead of investing in dorms, which weren't needed, he put the resources he would have used for it into two things. Better training for his students and a top-secret project of his. The Nomu the villains used were interesting but flawed. But Nezu was smarter than any other human in the world, more so than Garaki or anyone else. He could work out any kinks he came across. He hoped he wouldn't have to use something so powerful, but if Izuku stepped too far and killed a ranked hero, he'd unleash it without any hesitation. It was another day. After training to create their ultimate moves, which Izuku didn't participate, he called Toru over to his place. Being forever eager to please him, she rushed over inconspicuously. She was wearing something interesting for him under her large jacket. "Even though you can't see me, you should be able to take in and lust over my contours while I'm wearing this." Toru placed her hands on her backside, giving it a few healthy slaps. The tight denim shorts enunciating her thick, fleshy ass. "You love butts, don't you? And these?" Toru turns around, showing off her bouncy tits via a small bra. Her nipples were hard and poking through their red triangular coverings. She gropes herself, shuddering. "You love these too, no? I know your type. A busty bitch with a huge ass. Like Sue and Yaomomo." "That's correct," Izuku said as Toru straddled him like a stripper. "By the way, question. Do those cards heal everything when used on a person?" Where was she going with this? Izuku answered honestly. "Yeah. Sicknesses and chronic pains, everything. You'll be cleansed completely." Izuku could feel Toru smirk. "Good." She took something from her jacket, the item in question stunning Izuku. It was alcohol. An adult drink. If I'm to be a proper bitch, I gotta sound and act the part. Huh. I commandeered this from a shop. Don't fret over the details. She opened it, but before she could drink any, Asui walked in on them. Toru was shocked, but Izuku wasn't. He wanted to see what she would do. Asui stepped forward, fast. "Tisu. This isn't what it—" The frog girl appeared behind her, putting one hand around her neck and the other lifting her chin. Suddenly, Asui forcibly kissed her from behind, her prehensile tongue bulging in her throat. Izuku watched as Toru's shorts grew damp, and after a minute, she soiled them via orgasm. Asui separates from her, pulling her tongue from her neck at a slow pace, digging in twice more before pulling out completely. "You dirty bitch." Sue spanked her with her powerful tongue, making THR Invisible Girl squeal. "Sneaking behind my back, another slap. Stealing semen from my boyfriend, 2 more. I should punish you until you beg for mercy. After 1 more, Toru squirts yet again." She was a masochist and a glutton for punishment. Despite being mad, she wasn't mad. Izuku asked, "You aren't mad at me?" "No," Asui states. "You could have told me, though. Threesomes could be fun to dwell in. Sneaking behind me wasn't necessary." "My bad." Asui feels around Toru's head before grabbing and pulling her surprisingly long hair. You wanna be a whore so bad? We'll treat you like one. So it begins. Going upstairs to the bedroom, Toru was thrown down. Izuku sat on her torso, his throbbing shaft resting on her face. Her breaths tickled a bit but only served to arouse him further. Asui spoke. To be a proper bitch for Izuku-chan, you must be able to hold your own against Izuku's dick. He shifts around, shoving his length down her throat in one motion. As Izuku ruthlessly fucked her mouth, he grabbed the alcohol Toru brought and poured down her chest. From between her bust down to her snatch. Asui stares at the liquid with apprehension before Izuku says, I can heal you. Go nuts. That was all she needed to hear. Asui's tongue extended out, starting from her breasts and going downward. She drank up all of the alcohol that was poured on her body. Once she reached Toru's womanhood, she jammed her tongue within her depths, causing the invisible girl to scream against Izuku's phallus. Izuku violates her throat as Asui violates her inexperienced pussy. She was being spit-roasted, attacked on all sides. Toru, overwhelmed, orgasmed several times in Asui's mouth. And then, minutes later, Izuku finishes in Toru's mouth. Her cheeks puff up, and a bulge went down her throat every time she swallowed. It was hot. Next, Izuku and Asui switched positions. Asui sat her meaty rump on Toru's face, gyrating her hips as the invisible girl tongued her wet snatch. Meanwhile, Izuku lined himself up before going inside her balls deep, pounding her with vigor. With every thrust, Toru came on him. And Asui thoroughly enjoyed how eagerly Toru was tonguing her. So much so that she gently clamped her legs around her head and came straight into her mouth like a fire hose. Toru swallowed it all obediently, savoring its taste. After having their fun for this round, they both removed themselves from Toru. She was wet, convulsing mess. So you can heal her, right? Asui asked while stroking his shaft. Yeah. We go harder on her then? Asui grabbed Toru by the neck with her tongue. As soon as Toru got close, as if it were instinct and despite almost being unconscious, she wrapped her legs around Asui. That's it, Toru-chan. You're learning. The frog girl grabbed the alcohol and forced it into Toru's mouth, tilting the back of it upward. Toru drinks. A lot. After downing almost half of it, Asui puts it down and spreads Toru's ass open, tearing a sizable hole in her booty shorts to do so. The invisible girl moaned almost mindlessly as her rosy pink anus twitched needily. Izuku goes in, pounding the last hole he hadn't claimed from her. Meanwhile, Asui slapped Toru across the face with her tongue, commanding her to wake up, which she did. Sorry. Toru muttered before kissing her girlfriend. Asui kisses back, clogging her throat with her tongue once again. She could barely breathe, but it felt so good. Throughout this process, every time she threatened to pass out, Asui and Izuku would slap her on both sides to keep her awake, abusing and bruising her body, much to her delight. Never had she felt more truly seen in her life. Izuku comes in her again. Her mind was in such disarray from Asui and Izuku that when she was laid down by them, she turned visible. Bruises were prominent around her neck, and they stained her hourglass figure like dirt on a diamond. But Toru welcomed them with open arms, smiling up at her lovers as they stared down at her in surprise. Wow. They both said. Toru giggles. Am I that pretty to you guys? She looks at her hands. I've never seen myself before. I'm more impressed neither of us accidentally hit one of your eyes. Anyway. Asui picked her up by the air, making Toru bite her lip. Izuku sits down on the edge of his bed, opening his legs for the two girls. Asui and her tongue began to work at his shaft while Toru primarily focused on sucking and massaging Izuku's baseball-sized balls and scrotum, only occasionally kissing along his cock. All the while, they looked at him with love in their eyes. Minutes later, Izuku's legs shake, giving the signal for Asui to throat all of his inches and swallow all of his seed for the first time in this entire session. Izuku then holds Asui's hands, folding her into a mating press and pounding her. Toru, repaying Asui for earlier by sitting on her face. Her tongue welcomes itself in her snatch, creating a visible writhing bulge in her insides. Izuku kissed at Asui's navel, coming inside minutes later. Lastly for Asui, Izuku sits up, allowing for the frog girl to dance on his lap. Toru loved and admired her form, analyzing her curves and the way she moved, intending to copy it and do the same for Izuku later. Having enough of her amateur lap dance, Asui hiked up her thick ass, lines up her anus to her lover's cock and drops on it at full force, amateurishly twerking on his thick meat pole until Izuku comes like a vicious jet stream, hugging her from behind as he continued for a full minute. Wearily, Asui removes herself, allowing Toru to take her place and give Izuku the same treatment. She wasn't as heavy-bottomed as Asui, but her posterior still had enough size and weight to satisfy Izuku. While they went at it, Asui stood before Toru holding the alcohol. Toru opens her mouth, her tongue swirling around in the air and her eyes half-lidded, wanting the sweet liquid the bottle held. Asui pours the bottle's contents in Toru's mouth. The formerly invisible girl just kept drinking. That's all she was meant for. Asui moved closer, and Toru's lips connect with the bottle. Like a true bitch, she sucks and strokes the bottle like it was Izuku's dick until it was completely empty. With a victorious paw, she removed her lips from the bottle. So good, Toru, now on a drunken haze, continued bouncing on Izuku until he stuffed her full again. Despite him having done this, she kept herself firmly planted, leaning in back and turning her head to kiss and lick at his face. You're so sweet, Izuku honey. I'm so glad that someone like me could be seen and used for more than just heroism. I love you. She kept kissing him, repeating, I love you, in his ear over and over, drunk on more than just the greatest and only sex of her life. Toru unintentionally makes Izuku come inside her again with her movements. So, Asui starts, talking over Toru's sweet nothings. Who's next? Next. The next girl, Ribbit. I know you aren't stopping at us too. Izuku smirked, holding onto Toru's hips and waist. Mirko. Asui appeared surprised. Her? The one you had an internship with? Good luck, she didn't believe he could do it. Given time, it shouldn't be too hard to rein her in. Sue shrugged. She and Toru shared space on Izuku's lap, kissing him all over his face as they stroked his cock together. The provisional license exams arrived, and to 1A's surprise, everyone targeted them specifically, but Izuku wasn't worried. Instead of taking any of them seriously, he inspects the buffet of hot aspiring hero girls. Tatami, Ms. Joke, Kami, and the like. In the end, everyone passes except for Todoroki and Inasa of Shiketsu. They were a bit stronger than they would have been, after all. The next semester soon begins. Later down the line, Class 1A was introduced to the Big Three of UA. Izuku instantly took a liking to Najire Hato, the only girl on the three. Her breasts were huge, bigger than Momo's currently were. Hell, they were almost as big as hers when she was an adult in the last timeline. Immediately, Najire hounded Izuku, throwing questions at him at a mile a minute, but he kept up easily and answered every one of them somewhat honestly, which surprised her. He liked her quite a lot but wouldn't pursue her just yet. This leads into the Big Three teaching them about work studies and Mirio, the strongest one, challenging not Class 1A, but Izuku specifically. Nah. But Izuku refuses. Not gonna happen, man. What? Najire pouts. But why? I wanna see what you're like in a fight. It's 'cause I'll win. Before Mirio could speak, likely about his confidence, Izuku cuts him off. I could go on all day about how I would defeat all three of you, but I won't do that simply because I don't feel like it. You aren't worth my time, and I won't fight you. End of story. The Big Three didn't get a good impression of him, unfortunately. Instead, Mirio fights the rest of 1A with the exception of Izuku and Todoroki. The fight was one-sided and ultimately unimpressive in Izuku's eyes. Mirio used his powers well, but his quirk itself wasn't much to look at by metafolk standards. Later down the line, Izuku is recommended by Nezu and Mirio to go do his work study with All Might's former sidekick, Night Eye. Izuku had no reason to refuse this since there was a chance to learn of a few hot girls for later routes. Little did he know that Nezu planned on having Night Eye use his quirk on him to see what the future held for him. Led by Mirio, Izuku went to Night Eye's agency and, upon entering his office, was met by the sight of a blue-skinned heroine in a tickle machine. Bubble Girl was gorgeous, indeed. Another for the list along with the Pussy Cats, Beru Asui, and Najire. When they were alone, Night Eye speaks harshly of Izuku, droning on and on about his strength and his overconfidence. Izuku rolled his eyes, turning his gaze away from Night Eye just before he placed a hand upon his shoulder. This seemed to irritate him for some reason. Night Eye kept talking, but Izuku wasn't paying attention anymore. He was more interested in why he was so eager to look him directly in the eyes. Was he trying to use his quirk on him? Whatever the case, he purposely kept avoiding his eyes. So are you gonna employ me or what? Izuku asked with his eyes closed. Because if not, I'll just leave. You need me more than I need you anyway. Night Eye sighs. He was a little suspicious, wondering if Izuku knew what his quirk was, but he disregards this. Sorry, Nezu. Fine. The stern hero says. You're employed, Izuku Midoriya. There's a group of villains I've been looking into lately. You may be useful in finding them if your senses are as powerful as you make them out to be. They were sent out to patrol. Izuku was with Mirio, much to his annoyance. I don't need to walk the streets, Izuku proclaimed. If I want to, I could easily hear everything in the entire country, crime and all. Mirio deadpanned. Right. And then a little girl almost bumped into him. Almost. Izuku stepped back, letting him trip and hit the ground instead. Hey, you. The girl flinched, as did Mirio, but Izuku wasn't talking to either them. He points at the alley, and moments later, a man in a bird mask appears. You smell like someone who abuses children. Kaichisaki, aka Overhaul, was overwhelmed with fear. The one person he didn't want to encounter was standing before him. Izuku became something of a boogeyman in the villain underworld after he so easily dismantled AFO's network of evil. There wasn't a soul that wasn't afraid to face him. The second coming of All Might, but this time, far more malicious, thorough, and powerful. Fuck, if only he had a fully developed bullet. One hit from that, and Izuku wouldn't be a problem anymore. This was all the brat's fault. If he got out of this, she would receive the worst punishment of her entire life for putting someone so dangerous on his radar. He would break her once and for all. With what he had on hand, he had only two choices. He had to either somehow get Izuku to let him leave with Eri, or he had to touch Izuku with his quirk. One touch, just one measly touch, and he'd be out of his hair forever. You. Izuku picks up the shaking child. What's your name? She was a little scared of what could happen. She looked at Overhaul, but Izuku turned her head back. No, don't worry about him. He won't do anything now that I'm here. Overhaul growled under his mask, trying to intimidate Eri into not talking. Meanwhile, Mirio palmed Izuku's shoulder. Deku, put the kid down. Izuku pushed his hand away and addressed Eri. Well? My. She trembles. Eri. My name is Eri. Eri, huh? That's a nice name. Izuku shrugs. Are you afraid of me? Huh? Confusion replaces her fear as she speaks. No, I'm not afraid, are you, mister? Great. Izuku smiles, pointing to Overhaul. Does that ugly guy hurt you? Deku. Mirio says through gritted teeth. Overhaul stares at Eri. She was about to answer, but she just didn't. Rumors of Izuku's incredible power were so abundant that they even reached her ears. This was her one and only chance. Yes. Eri turned her head. He's a bad man who hurts me every single day. Overhaul tried to sneaking a glove off, but Izuku caught him and blew off his hand, bringing him to the ground screaming. You remind me of a certain other loser with dangerous hands. I forget his name, though. Izuku shot off Overhaul's right shoulder, effectively nullifying the villain's powers. Oh well. He didn't matter, and neither did you. He kicked him in the head, knocking him out. The patrol ended up not being as fruitful as Izuku thought. People were actually angry at him. For starters, though he didn't mean it. Overhaul actually died from shock due to his injuries. Izuku's LV went up to 7. Because he died, the only lead they had on the Hasaikai was Eri, who was extremely defensive and afraid. She was only willing to do as she was told if Deku was around, aka Izuku Midoriya. He was surprisingly nice to her. No one knew that Izuku genuinely didn't like hanging around Eri due to her cutting into his time with Asui and Hagakure. Izuku tried handing her off to Ink, but in the end, Eri became Yuei's ward due to the Yakuza still being at large. The rest of his work study with Night Eye was stale and uneventful. A part of Izuku regrets taking out Shigaraki and AFO so quickly. Maybe if they were still around, they'd spice up the events that transpired a bit. Time passes. Classes, training, and sex with Toru, Asui, or both at once became his life for a while. Todoroki's remedial courses came and went, and eventually, the annual school festival comes around. Izuku and Todoroki shoot down the idea of participating instantly. Izuku wasn't interested in it, and Todoroki, never really growing out of his angsty "I hate my father and I will never use his fire ever," phase, made a cold remark about the entire event. Seeing as they couldn't do anything to sway them, they respected their wishes and talked amongst themselves about what to do for the event. Over the next few days, Class 1A was allowed to relax while preparing. Izuku uses this time to do his own thing and explore Japan. More importantly, Mirko took the day off to cool off. Ever since that day, her mind had only been on one thing. Izuku Midoriya was powerful. Strong enough to dismantle thousands of villains and the strongest villain in just a few days. Strong enough to make a joke out of everything everyone threw at him. Strong enough to defeat her over and over again. Strong enough to dominate her. Despite his supposed young age, she craved his presence, and that thick musk of sex that hovered over him whetted her appetite. That strength, that force, it was exactly what she imagined her theoretical husband would have. She loved strength and respected any hero that had it. All she wanted was a good man who was stronger than her. And while Izuku wasn't good in the traditional sense, he was good. He was more like herself in her younger years. Mirko, while thinking of Izuku, rubbed her wet snatch raw. That strength, that power, she couldn't just let it slip out of her grasp. Somehow, some way, she had to have it. Fuck. Do I have to wait? By the time he graduates, he'll probably have. Then, the unthinkable happens. After a knock at the door, her nose twitches. The familiar sex-heavy scent that wafted around Izuku was there. Faster than intended, she clothed herself and rushed at the door and opened it. Indeed, it was the source of her dilemma, Izuku Midoriya. Hello. Mirko pants. Why? Are you here? She could barely concentrate around him. I was bored, so I figured I'd swing around and maybe have sex with you. Mirko slapped him. Save loaded. He'd have to wear her down a bit first. I was bored, and since nothing important is happening, I figured I'd swing by and have a few spars with you. Spar? Spar. Mirko nearly slapped herself for stuttering. Why do you want to spar with me? Well, Endeavor isn't really the sparring type. You, however, are pretty strong. Don't you want the chance to get back at me for all of your losses? Mirko smirked. You know me well. Come on in. She was hoping a good fight would take her mind off of her arousal. A few fights and losses later, and nothing changes. And to make things worse, Izuku seems to notice that something was wrong with her. Hey. I didn't catch you at a bad time, didn't I? You aren't as focused as you were last time. I'm fine. Mirko huffed and puffed, but she wasn't exhausted. Izuku frowns. I haven't told you this, but I have heightened senses as well, just like you. Mirko turns pale. And, well, aside from sweat, I can smell something else on you. Before I got here, were you? Mirko growled. A woman has her needs, brat. Izuku snickered. That's what guys are for. I didn't realize the great, powerful, attractive rabbit heroine was single. I don't just whore myself out every guy in a mile radius. Mirko crossed her arms. I have standards. And besides, most guys can't handle the great Mirko the hero. I probably could. What was that? Mirko narrowed her eyes. A sense of happiness appeared like a small spark. I could handle you. Easily. Mirko laughs. Just because you fucks your girlfriend a few times doesn't mean you can handle a real woman. Oh, and you have a girlfriend. Mirko's no homewrecker. 2. Huh? 2 girlfriends, and both of them are all for me taming you. Izuku explained with a grin. Sensing no deceit, Mirko took a step forward. I don't think you understand what you're in for, boy. You're strong, sure, but me? If you do damage me, which is unlikely, I can easily heal myself. And if I'm too rough, I can heal you as well, so. Mirko didn't know how this happened. Right now, she of all people was being held in a full Nelson and pounded into oblivion. She thinks back, remembering how she got here. She rushed Izuku ahead him in a bear hug, kissing him as roughly as she could. She intended to transition from this into an Amazon press before he could react, but somehow, he flipped their positions to what they were in now. She was caught off guard despite experiencing his strength before, and she was surprised by how good he was at this. Had he had that much practice with his girlfriends? In any case, after Izuku finally comes inside her, Mirko intended to gain the lead and dominate him, which she manages to do. She puts him on his back and begins riding her. Her fatty yet muscular piece of ass slapped against his pelvis at rabbit speed. Izuku took it like a champ and wasn't even bruised by her. That smile on his face pissed Mirko off, so she removed it by making out with him. Izuku melts into it and wrapped his arms around her head and back, deepening it. Mirko plants her hands and feet on the floor, focusing her energy on lifting and dropping her humongous backside on Izuku until he came inside her again, which he does after a few minutes. Izuku flips over. Now, with their places swapped but lips still locked in a steamy kiss, Izuku bashed against her womb in a mating press. He mimicked her rabbit speed with ease, exerting the same amount of force she did on him. Izuku grunts, his balls tensing as he pumps another huge load directly into Mirko's uterus. Each and every rope shot out of his cock like a high pressure hose. Mirko was overwhelmed, but she wasn't and never would be a quitter. As soon as he was done, Mirko switches places with him again, this time sitting up and squatting on the huge rod of man meat she intended to tame. Her thick thighs grew thicker with muscle, as does her dump truck ass. Izuku was surprised by the sudden increased tightness of her pussy as she began moving, twerking and shaking her ass better than Asui and Toru did in their first threesome. Izuku gropes the large and fast-moving posterior. Mirko, believing he was trying to slow her down, grinned. But that was not Izuku's intention. Right before Mirko's ass dropped on him, Izuku met it midair, the collision of thrust and ass creating miniature shockwaves. The revelation of Izuku consistently keeping up with her speed even in this stunned the rabbit heroine. But, again, Mirko wasn't a quitter. One orgasm from both parties later, Mirko picked Izuku up and slammed him against the wall. She raised her right leg and planted her foot on the wall, her flexibility allowing her to do a sideways split. Then, she slammed her stuffed pussy against the wall, her big rabbit girl booty flattening against Izuku. Izuku grabbed her sexy muscular leg and thrusts, literally fucking her sideways. One powerful orgasm later, Mirko shakily returned her leg to the ground. "I'm surprised you kept up with me for this long, brat." Mirko lines up her chocolate ass, lowering herself to the point where Izuku's tip was swallowed up by her anus. "You love big butts, don't you, brat? The size, the way they jiggle, and I know you're going crazy over my skin color. So take it. Fuck me until I can't move and make me your woman for life." She slammed her ass against him, cracking the wall. Izuku once again matches her strength and speed, going blow for blow with her until both of them blow their load onto each other. Izuku's was in her, and Mirko's drenched his large cock. Mirko removes herself, allowing Izuku to slump down to the floor. He lets her have this victory. "Hey, brat. It's a school day, and I don't want to keep you for too long, so let's end it here, okay? But one more shouldn't hurt." This time, the final time, they went slow. Mirko slowly rode his phallus while sensually kissing Izuku. The rabbit heroine squished her breasts against her chest as Izuku massaged her ass. And then, minutes later, the green-haired antihero comes inside of her. "You know, now that I think about it." Mirko pushed his hair back, planting a kiss on his forehead. "You're fucking adorable, Midoriya." After another few minutes of making out, she then says, "Did you have fun?" He nods. "Good boy. Let's do this again sometime, and maybe introduce me to those girlfriends of yours." They stand up, dressing themselves. Before Izuku left, he slapped Mirko's juicy ass, making her fall to her knees in ecstasy and squirt as he disappeared. Izuku reappeared at Ua at the perfect time. For whatever reason, two strangers broke onto the school's grounds. A well-dressed man and a short woman. Holy shit. Izuku howled in his mind as he restrained the two strangers. Gentle criminal was the man. Izuku shot his leg off, which made him surrender instantly. La Brava was the woman and easily the hottest shortstack in the galaxy. She had the biggest, fattest, heaviest ass he's ever seen, easily bigger than Momo's in the previous timeline. She was thick, a bottom-heavy goddess with a huge pair of tits, also bigger than Momo's. She was pretty, her hair was a nice color, she smelled divine, and the list went on and on. Izuku wanted her. He needed her. He needed to experience her, and if she was a virgin, he wanted to take it away. She had a small, compact, and breathable body he desired greatly. But not yet. He frowned as they were arrested, and La Brava screamed hateful words at him. He watched as her ass wobbled as she walked away. Not yet. Not yet. He had to wait. He had half a mind to just rape her and reload his save over and over until he was satisfied, but he didn't. That wasn't an adventure. He wanted to thoroughly explore the bodies and characters of every hot woman he could. Using his powers for sexual assault was no fun. It was lame. It was easy. Once this route was done, which he decided happened after he married the women he selected for a route, he would reset and gun for La Brava as fast as he could. Then he realizes something. Last time, he married 3 women: Momo, Mina, and Kyokujiro. And this time, he had 3 women sexually attached to him: Asui, Toru, and Rumi. He decided to keep with the trend. Next time, one of his love interests would be La Brava. That gravity-defying, doorway-busting, chair-breaking, pelvis-crushing gigantic ass would be his to enjoy. As for the second one, well, he'd think about it later. He enjoyed the school festival. But before it ends, a massive explosion could be heard at the front gate. Dozens of people began screaming. Izuku, unfazed, continued eating with Class 1A. He finished the rest of the festival food he received. And then he heard a familiar and grating voice shout, "Izuku Midoriya! Come out and face me." It was Shigaraki, but his voice was different. He sounded older, more mature. Whatever. He went over to face the villain. He was covered in raggedy, torn clothes, and he no longer wore hands on his body. His normal hands were still gone. And behind him was almost every villain Izuku spared thus far. "If it isn't my old punching bag." Izuku opened his arms. "How'd you get out of Tartarus?" Shigaraki just smiled at him. Then he died. In his vision, a red heart split in half before shattering to pieces. What? Izuku was in a void. This is a first. He didn't take it too hard. Killing metafolk was extremely difficult for mortals, and there were rules and regulations in place in case it did happen. These rules and regulations did not apply to metafolk with time-based powers like Izuku. It could be reversed, so he was free to die as many times as he wanted. "I didn't pay attention. That's my bad." And then white text appeared before him. Before him appeared 2 massive words. "Game over, game, huh?" More text appeared. "You cannot give up just yet." The text sounded weirdly female. "Izuku. Stay determined. Don't worry." Text. "Izuku will be just fine." Save loaded. "If it isn't my old punching bag." Izuku opened his arms. "How'd you get out of Tartarus?" This time, Izuku paid attention and heard a bullet speeding toward him. He easily dodged it, the surprisingly colorful bullet hitting the ground in front of him. Izuku looked back, spotting a busty sniper with colorful hair perched atop a building far away. "Of course you managed to dodge Lady Nagant's bullet," Shigaraki said, mildly annoyed. Izuku smiled. "No matter. It's been so long, Izuku Midoriya." Izuku lets him speak. "As for your earlier question, my time in that dreaded prison was spent honing my mind, leveling up my intelligence stat and shattering all of my mental barriers. Each and every second of the day was spent image training. I went over everything I knew about you, thinking about your death at my hands over and over again. I hate you. What hands?" Izuku joked, snorting and not being subtle at all. "You know, I gotta hand it to you, man. That little speech and this whole attack were awesome. On one hand, you're a little crazy. All of those offhanded remarks about me were rude. On the other hand, you're stupid. I mean, will of those goons really be handy to you? They didn't fight me hand-idly, after all. They can't throw hands at all. I'm not very merciful very often, but I'll hand you off to the police and use my hands to hand you another L with my handy hands. But, for all of your efforts, I'll give you a hand." Round of applause for Shigaraki attacks, sending out a massive decay wave through his feet. Save loaded. As for your earlier question, Izuku rushed Shigaraki and blew off his legs with his gun. Then he knocked him out. He proceeds to blitz and mutilate the remaining army of villains, knocking them unconscious but not killing them. "That's what you get for sneak attacking me, fucking dork." Then, remembering the mysterious Lady Nagant, he appeared behind her in just a few seconds, pinning her to the ground atop the building. "Listen here, sniper. Izuku, taking a liking to Nagant, humps her. The woman growled at him as his stiffening dick made itself comfortable between her plump ass cheeks. This will be your only warning. If I ever see you again for any reason at all, I will break you. Over. Izuku grabs her breasts and squeezes them hard, and over. He slapped her large booty. It jiggled wonderfully through her dress. And over. He pressed her lower half against her bottom, hard. And over again. There will be no mercy, do you understand? No reaction. Izuku slapped her ass again. Do you understand? Nagant nods rapidly. That's what I thought. He gets up, as does the woman. Now get out of here. Nagant shot him a silent glare before escaping. The day was saved by Izuku once again. And, comedically, no one died or even got injured. Apart from the damage to some buildings in the UA campus, the attack was a total failure. With that, the festival ended well. And so did Izuku's time at UA. His first year at UA was a little chaotic due to the villain attacks, but due to them failing, UA didn't face any scrutiny. In fact, their reputation as the greatest hero school in the world was only bolstered and reaffirmed by the villains' failures. Everyone became strong in their own right, but still, even without training at school much, Izuku was still the strongest by a country mile, and his grades were almost perfect. Of course, over the school year, Izuku and his girls met up and had sex plenty of times. His second year of UA was completely peaceful and generally a breeze. He dominated the second Quirk apprehension test and sports festival, going through it without getting touched yet again. His third year, like the second, was peaceful. He remained at the top, and when he officially became a pro, he made his way to the top at record pace. He became the #1 hero in less than half of a decade. He was widely known throughout the hero world as an unstoppable, unbeatable force of nature with zero weaknesses. Due to his controversial and brutal methods of dealing with villains, crime rates dropped to below 1%. The lowest they had ever been, ever. If you were a purse snatcher and caught by Izuku, you had a limb broken. If you tried to kill someone and got caught by Izuku, you had all of your limbs broken. If you were a full-blown supervillain, drug lord, mob boss, or anything of the like, you'd be given a choice by Izuku. You either lost both of your arms or your legs. He never got tired, he never got sick, he never showed weakness, and he always grew stronger by the day. There was nothing anyone could do to beat him. He was the most powerful hero to ever walk the earth. The unstoppable #1. And now, he sits in a comfy chair in the middle of a live interview. The interviewer asked him questions that tried to make him look bad, but Izuku easily deflects. In the end, his ideals were solidified and inspired many around the world to be a little more harsh with villains and criminals. Like with All Might, no one knew what Izuku's quirk was, and like with All Might, they'd likely never learn. There were theories, but at the end of the day, those were just theories and nothing more. Izuku knew that, deep down, political figures and the higher-ups were afraid of Izuku and his uncontrollable nature. At least with All Might and Endeavor, hiding from them was easy. Since they didn't have super hearing. But Izuku, well, hiding shady activity from him was almost impossible. It was like he was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Izuku has reached the end of his second journey. In the Midoriya household, 3 women gave a show for one in the bedroom. In tight green shorts and nothing else was Tsuyu Midoriya, who ran her hands across her curvaceous body. She was in her prime, with fuller breasts and a bigger butt than in her younger years. Her mammaries swung in the air as she spun on her heel, interlocking her fingers before twerking for her husband. She got lower, shaking her massive booty harder. It shook and wobbled like the finest pudding. It clapped, mimicking the sounds of heaven itself. Another wife appears. Toru Midoriya, wearing nothing but a tight pair of cream-colored shorts. Her figure had grown to almost match Asui's. When Asui stood, Toru grabbed her ass and squished each cheek together. Then, they kissed. The heavy milk tanks making up their breasts squished together. They ran their hands all over each other's bodies, kissing and kissing for what felt like days. Their love ran deep. Then, for the finale, Rumi Midoriya. She was retired and let herself go a little bit. She had earned it, and even though she was a little on the plump side, Izuku loved her nonetheless. She wore a pair of tight black shorts and walked up to the pair of girls. She grabbed both of their asses and alternated between making out with Su and Toru. So, husband, Tsuyu spoke up, grabbing the girls. Who are you gonna have your way with first? Toru. Suyu's hands found themselves on Toru's midsection. Her waist was slim, and her hips were wide. She bit her lip, loving and drinking in every second of attention. She drooled at the possible abuse Izuku would subject her to. Rumi? Suyu grabbed at Rumi's belly fat and love handles. She was thicker and less muscular, but now her meaty body served the purpose of being used by Izuku for his pleasure. Rumi nods eagerly, biting her lip as her froggy wife groped her belly and tits, all while lightly thrusting into her. Or me? Suyu turns around, clapping her dump truck ass without the need of her hands. Who will you choose to break, Izuku? The ball is in your court. All of you. Izuku says without hesitation. I choose all of you. His wives smiled, and Toru says, that's correct. Izuku rests her head on Mirko's thighs, the former rabbit heroine leaning down so that he could suck on her nipples. Toru, in turn, sucked on Izuku's nipples and occasionally left love bites all over his muscular body, which far surpassed a marble statue. Suyu jerks his meat pole, which had increased in size over the years, with her dexterous tongue. She then puts her mouth around it, hollowing her cheeks so that every inch of her mouth aside from her teeth is touching and massaging his dick. Izuku enjoyed his life. He enjoyed watching his women come together for a trio ass job, and he enjoyed fucking them unconscious afterwards. After many, many years of his place as the #1 hero being unchallenged and many years of fucking the same 3 women, he's had enough of this timeline. He gives his wives one last kiss before hitting the reset button. Next time, La Brava, whoever she was, would be his to conquer, along with the final 1A girl he hasn't experienced, Ochako Uraraka. The third one? He'd wait and see. Maybe he'd take Momo for another spin. Or maybe he'd pick one of the cuties from 1B. There were so many possibilities for him, and he couldn't wait to explore. Please drop by the archive and comment to let the creator know if you enjoyed their work.